Hello and welcome to the MinnMax Show podcast, a place about games, friends, getting better. I'm Ben Hansen, joined by Jeff Marchiafava.
Hello.
Janet Garcia.
Yo.
And her fancy pumpkin Starbucks drink. Please respect it. Also, special guest, JV Gwaltney.
Hey, everyone.
Returning from the dead. Welcome, Sir JV.
I have been dead a long time. Literally dead.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the last time you were on the podcast, we talked about, like, it seems like your Twitter feed is just talking about Phasmophobia and you and Elise sharing, like, clips of each other screaming. And somehow it's September in the year 2021, and it seems like you're still just playing Phasmophobia all the time.
I mean, I feel like Phasmophobia became sort of our pandemic hangout place,
yeah.
Especially when Elise was still in Washington. And we just have like a fairly sizable group of friends who play there. So it's like our bar that we go to pretty much more than it's a game at this point.
It's a haunted bar.
Yeah, it's a very haunted bar.
So it's a bar where everybody's just focused on grabbing clips of when somebody in the bar screams.
And dies.
And
it's
dies.
Very important. Yeah. Yeah. The dying is a very important part of the Phasmo experience.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. We'll kind of rekindle our love with you, JV, throughout this episode. We got a lot of community questions in the back half of the show that are very JV-centric, so it should be a good time. But JV, This isn't just any old episode of the MinnMax Show. This is technically, Jeffum, you better take a big swig of that drink, buddy. This is technically the 100th episode of our podcast. Can you believe it? Isn't that crazy?
You did it.
That is wild.
It includes like a couple, E3 bonus episodes and stuff like that. But Jeffum, does it feel like 100 of these?
No, it doesn't.
And it's that level of insight that keeps people coming back to the MinnMax Show. We're going to try and shake things up a little bit here this is just a test. Let us know what you think. But we're thinking there's so many great community questions every single week. Let's try taking one of them and just sliding them up to the top of the show in something that Janet, I think very correctly said, we should call the community catalyst in our Monday meeting. And then I put it to a vote on Twitter, and it seems like people are very into the idea of calling it a community kickoff. So with your permission, Janet, are you cool calling this opening community question before we dive into the games a community kickoff?
I'll allow it.
Okay, great. After this, by the way, we're going to be talking about Far Cry 6. We're going to be talking about the Dead Space remake, Wildermyth, 12 Minutes, Jett the Far Shore, Forgotten City, Riders Republic, Splitgate. Leo will be joining us. There's a lot of good game stuff. But to kick it off, for the big first community kickoff question, we have Jimble Shanks who writes in and says, Happy 100th episode! Thank you, Jimble. He says, I'm quite new, but I firmly believe that the best questions are easier to ask than they are to answer. This question really rocked me. It's one of those that's so basic we have never answered on the show. But he says, my question is, what do you think compels us about video games as a medium? Why do we continue to obsess and research and report on the art of it all? In the end, do you think there will ever be a rise of a new, more intriguing medium? Once again, happy 100th episode, and I hope you have an excellent week. Thank you, Jimble Shanks. It's such a basic one, but yeah, what is so compelling to us about video games as a medium at this point? Why are we obsessed about it?
I think the ease of like adventure and also accomplishment that you can get out of games. I think inherently, if you started as a kid, you probably went in more for like, it's a fun thing to do than like, I don't think as a kid, I was like, I really want to beat like 8 games this year. Like, I don't think I had those ideas. But at this point as an adult, it's like, yeah, it's like a fun, quick getaway. You can kind of immerse yourself in it, and because you're an active participant, when you finish it, there's always a feeling of accomplishment, of having seen it through and done it and been able to have that experience and talk about it with other people. So that's definitely what compels me to it, I think.
That's interesting. It's life's easiest form of accomplishment compared to, finishing a TV show. It's like, I guess that's something, but you're not going to like feel like a sense of pride in that. Whereas, hey, I spent 6 hours on this short little game, and there's like a little ounce of pride associated with that. I like that idea.
Yeah, there's like a personal agency to it. I think it's the interactivity as opposed to, like strictly storytelling mediums where you're just a passive listener that things are pouring into. Like in a video game, you actually get to go into that world and make choices for yourself. It kind of taps into kind of what larger games offer. And I think Janet was talking about was it gives you challenges that you wouldn't otherwise. It allows you to challenge yourself in ways that you otherwise wouldn't in life.
And so that's just so compelling that at a certain point, Jeff, you're like, well, now to dedicate my full career because I like these little challenges.
Is the question like me personally as someone who covers games?
Why do we continue to obsess and research and report on the art of it all?
It was like we as humanity.
I think it's a little of the fusion,
like,
I think.
SoCal Gas charged me for the gas this month. That's why I continue to play.
I don't know. I think about it a lot. I think about when I was in college at the University of Minnesota, and kind of like film and media studies was like part of the major, and I remember just feeling like, oh, they are so out of the loop. The fact that we're still focusing so much on old TV and on old film, and there was just no aspect for studying video games or really even mentioning video games in any of the curriculum. And this is 2005 to 2009. I remember just feeling like, oh, this really is the underdog medium. And so I felt like that was kind of my specialty, if you could use so bold of a word, in college, was like, okay, I'm going to steer everything towards video games and take all these concepts from the world of film and try and address it to video games, just because it all felt so new and exciting. And I think the speed of the medium is something that was really alluring. Number one, the underdog aspect. Our parents largely didn't understand it, except for you, JB, because your dad's cool and stuff.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, but then just the speed of it, the fact that there are new concepts, especially in that era, but even this to today, every year, it's you need to keep up with where video games are moving because no other medium is at the velocity of these. And that's impossible to look away from. I don't know, JV, where are you at with this stuff?
I mean, to me, I think video games are fascinating to me, and why I wrote about them as long as I did and was interested, on the journalism side, and what I gravitated to was something Jeffem kind of touched upon about, to me, it's like you get your chance to be the person around the campfire telling the story, and there's not that much resistance to that. There's so many games that give you the ability to okay, here's the setting. You are the person at the center of this world or this story, and you make choices that determine how it plays out, or have their own little flavor to them. Dishonored is a great version of that. Your choices, the choices that you make every step of the way, determine how that world shifts and how the players in it shift. And you get to define who Corvo is as a person by your actions and what you choose to invest in, both in investigating, sort of the environment, both in the NPCs you talk to, how wrapped up you get into their story. So is he really empathetic and concerned about the people of Dunwall, or is he just zeroed in, focused on whatever his mission is, whether it's revenge or putting Emily back on the throne, that sort of stuff. So I really like games' ability to offer everyone that ability to become this sort of storyteller in a small way. I think that's what I'm most interested in, and that's what I usually kind of tried to write about with the virtual life and stuff. It feels was how does this put you in the driver's seat? What does it mean when games put you in the driver's seat? What does that do for you as a person?
Right.
So that's kind of my interest in them, and that hasn't really changed in the past 20 years or so, it feels like.
Yeah, it's weird. You think we get sick of talking about these things at some point, but it's pretty remarkable. Janet, do you ever have the burnout of you don't want to talk about these things anymore?
No, just because there's so much left to do.
Yeah.
I think certainly for myself, I, started as a hobby, it's something I did for fun. And then once I fell into the actual act of writing about games, I'm oh man, I got to go back and play all these different franchises and fill these gaps, or learn about so many genres and styles and verticals. There are genres I have no understanding of and I've never touched that I want to dig into, and everyone has JV, you mentioned, different specialties or things that they might feel passionate to write or stream. So I just feel it is endless content, which is a little horrifying.
Yeah.
I'll never really be done. I don't think I'll ever be satisfied with that progress, but I kind of like having something like that where I can feel like I'm making progress and growth as a critic and a player, but also knowing that there's so much left to explore is really exciting to me.
Yeah, and
100%.
On the flip side too, I love about the industry and the medium is that idea that there's so much to cover, yet we have the best chance of understanding this medium compared to anything else. All right, I had that interest, and the fact that it's so young as an overall medium, like it gives me that opportunity to be like, I might be able to wrap my head around largely an entire field of entertainment, which is pretty rare. Like you're jumping in, born in 1987. It's like, okay, try and have all of the history of film enveloped in your head. Pretty tough. But with video games, it's like, I think I can do it. If I keep paying attention for the rest of my life, I can kind of be like in the arena of an expert on a medium, which is pretty rare.
Yeah, and I think the timetable upon which games are like, evolving is much different than how film did and how literature did. So a thing that I've been trying to be conscious about lately in terms of like, how quickly fads and like revolutions happen in the game space, like they're pretty quick. You don't have to wait decades for them to happen. They'll happen in like 2 to 5 years. So a thing I try to be aware about is I don't want to be the old grumpy critic or like the old grumpy games person who's like, I don't get it, so it sucks.
Right. And
sometimes that's a real struggle. But it's also really kind of neat to like deal with that, I think, for the first time in my life. To be like the on the porch who's like grumpy about the kids on the lawn or whatever, because it's stuff about like the metaverse and like Fortnite, like that sort of stuff kind of like bothers me because there's no boundaries separating, intellectual properties or stories or whatever. But again, the kind of appeal of those things to throw all those things in a blender. So, that's an example of me trying to like grapple with that and understand it and like, put aside whatever sort of like assumptions that I have about it and grow to appreciate it for what it is, even though it's not my thing. Like I look forward to those kind of challenges as well in this space, and they happen all the time. Yeah. As there are new things on the horizon.
Yeah, we're all going to feel old on basically a weekly basis at this point, I think.
Yeah.
Hey, we should jump into some actual games here. First of all, No More Heroes 3 on the Nintendo Switch. We could not have Suriel Vasquez talking about No More Heroes 3 because he's, as far as I know, the number one fan of Suda51 on the planet. His favorite game of all time is Killer 7. And so we recorded a Patreon exclusive podcast with Suriel Vasquez. It was Kyle Hilliard and Suriel Vasquez talking all about No More Heroes 3, basically the big review discussion. So if you want to hear Suriel just let it rip explaining why he's so passionate about Suda's work, the history there, Grasshopper, and his exact thoughts on No More Heroes 3 and why it's so interesting, you can head on over to Patreon. We'd appreciate the support. You can unlock the podcast version of that and the podcast version of a bunch of other stuff.
All 7 hours of it.
Yeah, he would not stop, but it was fun.
Yeah, I feel like Suriel is the person you want to know, like the takeaway for like No More Heroes 3, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Like he's the guy, like I want to know what he knows more than necessarily anyone else.
Right.
Just because he's so invested in that franchise, but is also capable of being super critical about it when it sucks. So like I really want to hear his takeaway.
Yeah, for most people it's like, oh, Travis Strikes Again, that came out a couple years ago on the Switch. All right, whatever. But he's like, okay, here are the beats by beats, which levels succeed in Travis Strikes Again and which ones don't. So please check that out. Anyway.
In this essay, I will.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Hey, Janet, Far Cry 6 is a game that's coming out soon, and you shocked the world, mainly just us in the Monday meeting when you said, oh yeah, I got to play a lot of that. It's like a huge preview beat that you got to check out, right?
Yeah.
So it was, how long of the game did you get to play?
I believe it was 4 or 5 hours. At first I'm like, is this 4 hours? And everyone's like, with my 5 hours. So I was like, oh shit, guess what's 5? Yeah, I did 5 hours. The first maybe 3 were just 3 or 4 were like single player, and then we got to spend some time with the 2-player co-op. And we started at the beginning of the game, but then at a certain point in my single player playthrough, they jumped me towards the middle point just to kind of see okay, here are the kind of weapons you can have, and here's when you already have access to planes and your wingsuit and all those kind of elements. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
What'd you think?
I liked it. I left cautiously optimistic. Admittedly, this is my first Far Cry game, which is always weird when you enter a franchise through a preview. It's like, this is interesting.
Yeah.
But from the outside looking in, I always saw Far Cry as okay, it's crazy over the top. It's really explosive. It might be kind of washed at this point, is sort of the word on the street in the kind of Far Cry community.
Yeah.
So it definitely struck me as a franchise. It's also kind of in need of a win, but that's sort of playing with highly charged subject matter So it's like, all right, let's go into this. So I went in a little bit wary, but honestly, I left feeling better about it than I did when I started because I had a lot of fun with it. I really like the melee combat in the game. It is very gruesome, which is not new to the franchise, but it was kind of something like when I took my like machete and like ran it through like a body in first person, and then it's like a lot. It's a lot.com a little bit. But if you're into that kind of thing, I sort of in my preview described it as Far Cry 6 is for the people that, chant and cheer when the machine gun scene comes out in Scarface. Like if you're into the gore and the spectacle, you're in for a treat. If you maybe are not that into that, it might not be a game for you, but I really enjoyed that element of it. And I found that culturally, like, it did all right. Like, I think there were a few flubs here and there were some things that give me pause, but it didn't feel like, oh, this is super inappropriate or super, like, mocking of, like, a culture or, like, leaning too heavy into stereotypes. Certainly things like that, but overall, I'm like, oh, this is, like, a really interesting and could be a powerful story depending on how they handle it. And I thought Giancarlo Esposito, did great acting wise. I didn't see that many cutscenes with him, but he's Gus from Breaking Bad basically, and I think he played that role well.
Yeah.
So
it's the whole thing is this one takes place in Yara, which is basically Cuba, and there's a whole revolution going on down there. But I am fascinated by that idea of, for every other preview that I saw, everyone's like, it's more Far Cry. You get the idea. But I went and watched the gameplay and it's like, yeah, it's more Far Cry, but like there's a lot of very good ingredients in this pie. Like, so I cannot wrap my mind around the idea of like coming in cold to a new Far Cry and being like, all the stuff you could do, this seems awesome. This seems silly. This seems like so much fun. But just that matter of perspective is night and day.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, I talked to some people that have had experience with the franchise, which it's always kind of fun too to have that opportunity as well. Like sometimes I do see it as a bit of a strength if you can enter without having the background, because I don't have any of the same like baggage or expectation. I'm just looking for like a good game. So, seeing things like, or talking to people after the fact about how you can like bribe double agents to get like the cache locations, and that being like a subtle way they sort of changed up distributing that kind of mechanic, and then, looking into like how is the, open world, and it's pretty easy to just kind of travel around and not be bothered, which I know in the past, maybe it was a little bit harder to like get around undetected or kind of explore freely.
Sure.
But yeah, I had a good time with it. And I really liked the pet companions you have. Like they start you off with an alligator named Wapple. And like, I freaking love that alligator, man. That alligator is like so down and so good at like attacking people. It was a fun kind of tool set that you were given, I think, to play with. And I think the areas and encampments are really like well designed in terms of giving you variety to take on a challenge. A lot of conveniently placed turrets, some zip lines, some different
what they're doing.
Areas to scout out. It's it definitely favors, I think, going in loud because it's Far Cry and that's a little bit more fun. But I had a good time with that overall.
That's crazy. Like, Jeff, where's your hype level at for Far Cry, do you think?
Well, I appreciate hearing that exactly that kind of perspective of a new person going in, because I do feel so jaded at this point with Far Cry games because I've played so many of them. But that is something that's always in the back of my mind of like these games, they have all those elements. They are, executing them well, but it's just I've done it so many times that I don't get super excited beforehand going into it.
Right.
But I'm sure if I play it, I'm sure I'll, find plenty of fun from it.
Yeah, like I was watching the gameplay and just thinking like, what if I just played through this entire campaign co-op with a friend? Like that's something that I've never done with Far Cry, and the fact that the last couple have had like, okay, you can actually play the full campaign with jump in, jump out co-op, like that could be an absurdly fun time, like one of the best, just most silly open world experiences of the year. But because Far Cry's been around for a while, it's like, do I really want to have that much fun? I've done it before. But it's like, I think that's a good opportunity for jumping in fresh and kind of making it seem alive. But JV, where are you at with Far Cry 6, man?
I'll play it when it comes out, but I am that jaded person.
Oh, good.
Just because I think 5 really let me down, because I fell for the marketing push, and I know Pork and I talked about it, and maybe Jeffem too, when the game came out, but it felt like they promised something that they never even tried to deliver on, as opposed to like, oh, they wanted to do this and then they never got around to it. Or it felt really deceptive to me, and I wrote about that. And so like from that perspective, I feel a little jaded. But like if this game's just more of the crazy fun that was in 3 and 4, I'm all for it, because my favorite one's actually 4, and I just remember stuff like riding the elephant with like a ridiculous machine gun mowing down folks. It sounds bad when I put it like that, but if it's more of that, there, like if I can sick my alligator on people, if I can just go around and like a Miami Vice kind of boat and just shoot at enemies on the shore with a ridiculous gun, like I'm for it. And obviously, like Giancarlo, I love Gus Fring. I actually went back through Breaking Bad recently, so I'm all about that. So I'll play it. I just have very low expectations, but that's not a bad thing. That will probably serve me more in the end.
Well, you missed it. They had a message. They said that this game is political now, JB, compared to the other ones which weren't political. So now it's going to be everything you want for your big narrative teeth.
We'll see.
Okay.
It's all supervised.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, I think admittedly, games like this struggle to get past the ceiling that I think they sometimes have, because they are so formulaic, and it's very like, oh, you take out this, outpost, and now it's like a fast travel point, and you also get like these other things. Like they do have a lot of those elements, and you can kind of see like all the wirings behind it. So I do think that part can, wear a little thin. And I think, my big takeaway from my time with it is I think if there's a fault here is just that it's a little bit like basic, right? Like things like you can pick up, enemy bodies, which you can do in a million other games. But I'm like, okay, I don't really see like any like cool way I can hide them, which you can also do in a million other games. But like a little stuff like that, I think could have gone a long way to just kind of, you really like need those additional tweaks. One of the big things that stood out to me was the emphasis on like gear instead of like player stats, so you can like mix and match your gear, like have the perks and then have like another one for the cosmetics, so you can kind of combine those as you want.
Yeah, I'm curious about like that reliance on cosmetics. Even it seems wild because they're focusing on like, okay, you play as Danny, the main character, you can choose the gender of Danny, and then you're actually seeing them like in cutscenes, which is new for Far Cry. So like trying to emphasize the personality to that extent of, oh, I actually get to look at my character in cutscenes now. That's at least a shake up for Far Cry. We get a new level of attachment here, including caring about gear and all that stuff.
Yeah, and they I didn't actually mention this too much in my preview because it was really not that significant, but I know people were asking about like the third person element. And
right.
It's basically just when you go to like your kind of camp base, like later in the game it goes third person for those parts, and then when you walk out it goes into first. And I don't really know why. I guess they just wanted you to be able to see yourself a little bit more, but it really isn't like, it's not like, why can't I drive in third person, which like that's very needed. Or like, and there are a few small gripes and nitpicks I have, like, traversing on a horse, like it feels better than the car, but it's still like the animation, I'm like, I'm not a big fan, but it kind of is just a means to like get around for me. And I'm like, all right, that's fine.
Yeah. But Far Cry 6 coming out October 7th. So
wow,
I'm very curious.
Soon.
I know everything is soon, JV. We are in it.
Oh, I know.
Working in the PR world. It's been a lot for you recently.
Yeah, there's a lot of looking at calendars and sweating.
Oh, good.
Work in PR, yeah.
That sounds delightful.
Yeah.
Well, hey, real quick, they didn't reveal too much, but they had a really interesting stream recently showing off where they're at with the Dead Space remake. So this is a studio that made Star Wars Squadrons from EA Motive. They also made Battlefront 2, but it feels like not that long ago they revealed that they were actually doing a remake of the first Dead Space, and then they just had this stream which was very non-EA like but very welcome, where it was just developers talking about their plans for the remake, and then they just showed off basically gray box environments, showing off like, okay, here's the damage we can do to necromorphs, here's how we're changing this, here's how we're changing this, and just having a big warning of like, please take everything with a grain of salt. This is super, super early. But they were showing Isaac Clarke like walking around the Ishimura. It's crazy to see that level of transparency from EA, especially from EA Motive, which is a studio that was formed with Jade Raymond to create new IP. And they were working on Project Atlas, I think the name of it was, which is going to be this open world physicsy thing. And they're working on it in secret for, since their founding. So like an 8-year project or something. So I'm sure that team was just so eager to get some more work of theirs out into the world. But Jeff, did you see any headlines or anything about this Dead Space remake stream?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Let's see. Imran Khan said that it was too bright. We all saw that famous tweet Which it's like everything with that grain of salt. Like you can't judge it at this point. It is so early, but it looks good.
I'm just really impressed by the idea of like, and I wish more developers would do it, of showing games off this early in development, because I feel like one of the really coolest experiences we had on the Game Informer trips, Ben, was when we went and we saw the Call of Duty Battle Royale several months before it launched. And
Blackout.
It's not that it was rough. It was very impressive for where it was. But in terms of like, a Call of Duty comes out and it's one of the most polished games on the market. Like, within the context of that, it was super rough. They had gray box stuff everywhere. We were running through gray box environments. They didn't have animations for everything. And so when that game came out, I had a deeper appreciation for like how it had come along and how it had come together. So I wish there was more videos and features coming from studios themselves focusing on like, hey, here's this game. It'll be a thing 2 years from now, hopefully, but this is where it's at right now. This is the starting point. It's an absurd amount of work, because I feel like that does such a good job of communicating to people who are normally unappreciative of like the work that goes into games. Like if you can literally show them how much work, I feel like that might help with a certain element of toxicity. The entitled kind of toxicity, not the awful like racism, bigotry toxicity, but just the like, well, it's so easy to code this. Why don't they just add this feature within a week or whatever? Why don't they hit a button? That sort of thing. So I hope we see more of that, because that's really cool.
I hope so too, and I hope I don't scare developers or publishers away from doing more of that. But I always just think of the best example, the most transparent game ever made, which is Broken Age from Double Fine, with their whole documentary series, which is incredible. Jeff, you should really watch that documentary series.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Write it down, please. Just a post-it note on your monitor. I'd appreciate it. But anyways, like the crazy thing about that is at the end of that entire journey, I feel like even in the documentary itself, Tim Schafer talks about it. And also in additional interviews, they talked about like, being that transparent and trying to deal with an angry crowd online, we were just handing them the weapons to beat us with. They now knew exactly like, oh, this project messed up because this person made this call here, and this is where you mess it up, and you're a lazy dev because there's a shot of you at the bar in this episode. And so it's like, God, you really can't win either way. But they're trying, and I love seeing EA try. And the message here is like, hey, we're rounding up the community council, and we have like a team of experts from the community that we're consulting every decision with, just to try and stay on the positive end of this social wave.
Yeah, and I think the difference there is that like from everything that you've said about this Broken Age documentary that I need to watch but haven't yet.
Necessary
like
viewing.
That kind of behind the scenes, I don't know that EA is going to be like, well, here's so and so making the decision about necromorph heads not coming off, but just kind of showing a little bit of that, of the progress and the process of developing, not necessarily like from a documentary standpoint, but just the amount of work that goes into it. And I think it will help kind of get feedback coming in earlier in the design process when they can actually maybe react to some of it. Like having Imran say, hey, it's too bright. If that was
he
like
wouldn't stop saying
a
that.
weird thing that people
He really
like,
changed the world with that tweet.
yeah. It's better getting that kind of thing early, because I think EA has had plenty of instances where a game will come out and then it will just get trashed by everyone because they did make a decision much earlier in the process, or they come out with a beta, that's a beta that comes out a week before the game comes out.
Right.
And everyone starts complaining about it. Like maybe they can actually get some kind of idea from the fan base of what they want from this game, of where they may, there may be disagreement from the community about where they're going, and hopefully they can actually add some of that or have that influence things.
Well, here's
I think it's mostly a matter of like how you frame the behind the scenes and what content you offer. Like obviously you would not want to show devs in bars or whatever because of, what Tim said.
Sure.
But like, treating it more like Kickstarter updates almost, I feel like would be the way to go, of like, hey, here's the new enemy, here's the new version of that necromorph you really like. Here's the process we took in creating him, sort of thing, like that sort of stuff. I think you can present that in a smart, educated way without putting any of your devs by name in danger of harassment. Like, there are ways to go about it, but I think there's a good middle line to walk. Personally.
And EA is not going to be bringing in an independent film crew to, record their development of Dead Space and put that out. I'm sure they're going to be mindful of what they're actually showing and trying to show it in the best light, which hopefully won't backfire.
They showed it in too much light, according to this Imran Khan tweet. It's taking over the world.
Apparently.
But hey, as somebody who just played through Dead Space 1 for the deepest dive, you can check it out on MinnMax's YouTube channel or unlock the podcast version by supporting us on Patreon. It's a very fun, thorough discussion about that first game. But if I may offer a little feedback, there's too much fog on the ground. It's a spaceship. It's Ishimura. Like, especially for the environments they showed, they even had like side by sides, and it's just like this fog over the ground. It's like, it's just a ship. You can have some fog in certain areas. I understand that, but it's a bit much in this very, very early footage. So I will take back all criticism until I see the final thing. But
see, that's what they needed to hear first.
Hopefully that was polite enough. But okay, actual takeaways here. Big thing is they're reworking 0G. So it's no longer in the first one. It was like, you just kind of pointed a direction, then went, no, and like launched yourself that direction, and wherever you landed, you landed. They're taking what they did for Dead Space 2, where you have like direct control flying around the Ishimura, but they're keeping some of like the level design, or most of the level design, it seems like basically the same. So they're saying having that ability to actually fly around in the 0G environments kind of changes the way you're navigating and unlocking spaces around here, so it shook things up more than you would expect. They also said, JV, you're thinking?
I'm thinking.
Oh, your mouth kept moving. I thought you were ready to jump in.
Oh, no, sorry.
No, that's fine. If you could just hold your mouth shut most of the podcast. Okay, great. But they also said that with the necromorphs, that it's no longer just like shoot them in the leg twice and the leg comes off. You have to shoot them once in a limb, and then it shows like battle damage. You can see their freaky skeleton, and then you have to shoot them in that exact same spot again and actually hit the skeleton for the limb to come off. So it's like small little gameplay tweaks like that. They also said that they're bringing back the voice actor Gunnar Wright, who is the voice of Isaac in 2 and 3, and that Isaac will talk in Dead Space 1 now. But they're very specific. He will only talk when spoken to. He's not going to talk while he's running around the ship on his own.
Okay.
Which is like, that seems like a good middle ground. Yeah, I think that's the way to go. Yeah. And also they said that there's going to be more of him on a quest for Nicole, instead of Nicole just being like this larger narrative thing of like, I've got to go find my girlfriend. Now he's going to be uncovering pieces of their backstory and stuff as they're journeying along, which they're kind of like flashes of in the first one, but kind of expanding on that. So it seems like they're moving in the right direction. So hats off to that team. JV, do you remember at the start of the show when you were talking about the power of decisions in games and how you love player stories unfolding?
Mm-hmm.
It made me think of this little game called Wildermyth.
Oh, I've heard of that game.
Yeah, we've talked about it a couple times briefly on this podcast, but Wildermyth, PC-only game right now that I believe I just saw you tweeting about, falling head over heels in love with this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, JV, how would you describe Wildermyth? I tried talking about it a while ago, and it's kind of a tough one to explain.
I honestly, Mike Mahardy either described it as this or he referenced someone describing it as this, and I think it's the best way to present it is it's XCOM meets Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, so basically, it's not one huge story. You load up the game, and there are several campaigns you can choose, like a D&D campaign. And every campaign that you start, you create 3 heroes. Or, if you've played other campaigns before, you can pull heroes from a previous campaign that you've created. And so you go on adventures with them, and you fight monsters against various threats. Again, there's no overarching threat. Like each campaign has like a faction as an enemy, and they're like threatening the land, and you beat them. But each campaign has chapters, so you have this huge overmap where you go on adventures with your party members, and I think it's up to 5 or 6 that you can have. And so as you go around the map, like fighting enemies to try and clear the map of enemies before going to the final battle, you'll have random events happen. Like, for example, I came across one of my wizard or mystic, as they're called in the game, came across a statue with a gemstone in it that he really wanted. And I had a choice. I could take that gemstone or I could leave it be. And I tried to take it. And so it ejected out of the statue into his eye socket and became part of him. And over the campaign, it started to transform his body and bestow powers upon him while taking other things away. Like he'd lose speed, but he'd get this new ability to, what is it? This might be incorrect for this specific one, but
sure.
like, you know, like there's another one where if you dip your hand in like a pit of fire, you come out with like a fire hand and you can cast fire spells and stuff. But the key point is the longer you progress with your characters in that campaign and across campaigns, you'll have the choice to advance the transformation. So it's sort of like a Pokemon evolution sort of thing of like, ooh, do I want this character to become, you know, more like this this element? You know, do they become completely fire at one point?
Yeah.
Like I had a warrior who made a pact with crows, like a faction of crows, and at this point across 3 campaigns she just become this giant crow that wields a sword and wears armor.
So good. We love Death's Door.
Yeah, but you know, it's basically a very bite-sized D&D campaign with super satisfying XCOM combat and decision making, and it really feels like, I think a good point of comparison, Fire Emblem. Actually, if you go back to like Fire Emblem Awakening and Fire Emblem Fates, you know, you get all this huge cast of characters that you can bond with, and there's a lot of decision making when it comes down to like who they take on as romantic partners. And the thing with that sort of game is you can rig it, right? Like, okay, well, to get the outcome that I want, I'll have character A spend a lot of time with character B, get them gifts, always have them fighting in battle, so you get the desired outcome. The thing about Wildermyth that I really like, and I wish that more narrative-driven games would do, is that it has this element of unpredictability about it. I can't choose which of my characters will fall in love, which ones will develop rival relationships.
Yeah.
I can't do that stuff. It's just up to random things. So, you know, like, oh, my crow lady and my fire wizard might fall in love and they might have a kid. And then that kid, you know, once these characters retire, which can happen, they can retire, they can die in combat, the kid will take over. And it's just, there's so much going on there. There's so many movable parts that you can have fun with as a storyteller, but it doesn't give you full control. So it's still a surprise, like 8 or 9 campaigns in, you know, it's just so much ridiculous fun and it's so creative, and it's not overwhelming, you know, because one of the things that I don't like about Fire Emblem, and I love Fire Emblem, I really love Fire Emblem, is those battles are huge and they can go on for like an hour, especially towards the end game. All the battles, nearly every single battle I've had in Wildermyth, again, to go back to the Fellowship of the Ring, when they're fighting the troll in Moria, like it's that size of a battle. Like,
set the clock. It's exactly the same. Yep.
Yeah. It's like you're in a room, you're fighting like a bunch of enemies, and then it's over in like 10, 15 minutes.
But still, you know, like you have that.
It's very respectful of your time, and I really appreciate that. Sorry,
totally.
I didn't interrupt you.
That's fine. It still has those moments though of like make or break moments in the battle. It reminds me of like playing, you can kind of play XCOM Iron Man mode where you can turn that on and not go back, which is absolutely the way that I play because I love having consequences. And so having the idea of this procedural narrative as you're going through the larger story where you're making choices that will really, really matter, having each turn in the combat really matter as well. You know, like I had 2 characters in this campaign last night, and they were intense rivals. Oh, going back to childhood, they always were in this fierce competition. And then one of them, just in combat, I made a stupid move, and then he was on death's door. I know I just mentioned that earlier, but really on death's door. And then you have the option of like, you can have this guy go out and do 12 points of damage as this big heroic finish as he dies, or just kind of fade away and maybe you can revive him later on and something. It's like, no, this is my story. Actually, I'm going with, he is going to go out in this hail of glory as his friend's like, no, don't do it. And he just kills some, you know, random wolf or whatever and just actually killed him there. But like, it just adds so much to it then, because then the third person in my party was the lover of the guy who survived, and they're like trying to have this uncomfortable conversation where she's trying to bring up what happened and he doesn't want to talk about it, and then you can go out of your way to actually build a shrine to the person that died. And then strangely enough, JV, this makes it seem like there's only so many of these events, but this is the first time I've heard of another one repeating. But then like the next thing that happened is the guy's lover was exploring in the forest and found that weird gem thing, and then got like a gem lodged in her eye. So I'm like, oh, this poor guy, like his only person left, his beautiful girlfriend, now is half stone at this point from this crazy stuff happening. Jeff, did you check this thing out yet?
I did, Hanson.
Oh, good.
It may be the best recommendation you've ever given me.
Yes.
Unlike that Broken Age documentary business, which I'm never gonna.
How dare you?
But no, and I think if we haven't made it clear, like the thing that's really interesting about it is this emphasis on the storytelling of it, to the point where it kind of has like a fairy tale aesthetic, like a 2D hand drawn aesthetic, and then every event that happens in every kind of land, when you go into a new land, you'll fight a battle there to kind of take over that area. But everyone has a story element to it, and it will tell you the author of that story, even though they're all like 90% of them are by the same person. But it really kind of walks you through. There's like narration to each one. It has kind of a comic book look to it, and they spend so much time on kind of describing locations that you're in, like even little things of like how the breeze is blowing in, and like those kind of like traditional storytelling elements I found have made such a big impact on me in terms of like building up this sense of a grand adventure. Like I play so many open world games where it's supposed to be this big adventure, but 90% of the time it's me just walking around in silence, like picking mushrooms in a forest or whatever, and it doesn't feel like I'm building to an adventure. And here, like each step of the way, after a small encounter with some wolves or whatever, like you said, there's a real storytelling element to it, and kind of describing what the characters are going through. You get to hear their thoughts of things that they're thinking about, which you don't usually get in video games. And it does a great job of making you feel like you're having this unique adventure with unique characters going through it.
Yeah, and it's like a weird lesson in just they could be randomly generated characters, but the fact that you are making all of their choices and there are such big swings here and you're so fully in control, you become so much more invested in these characters than anybody else. You're projecting your own stories as these little stories are branching out.
Yeah, I'm more invested, honestly, in like 4 or 5 of these party members than I have been in any of the characters I've played in like any other game this year. Just because like it's so cool. Like, for example, I had this rogue lady that I started out with, and in the first battle, I made a horrible decision, and she got maimed and lost her right eye and took like a -20 hit to accuracy. And because she's so like bow focused, I was like, damn, she's not going to be able to help that much.
You put her
battle.
down?
What?
You put her down?
No, she got maimed. So,
I know, but I'm trying to guess where this is going, JB.
Oh, gotcha. No, I did not put her down.
Okay.
What happened is that she came back stronger than ever. She got a shield. She got a shield in the next battle and a crossbow, and she became the strongest player, or the strongest party member, just out of pure spite. Like, she just dominated everyone. It was so satisfying. It's just stuff like that. Like, there's so many building blocks that you can mess around with, but also I really, really like that the game has the confidence to take away certain abilities from you. Yeah. Like the ability to choose who to fall in love with, or, which events are going to happen to you. Like, that is such, like, just so much confidence in that. And it pays out so well here in ways that it doesn't necessarily play out so well in other similar sort of like story procedurally generated games. Like, not to pick on this game because I ultimately like it a fair amount, but I think it's Road 96.
Right.
I think that's a very bold experiment. I don't think it kind of holds together nearly as well as Wildermyth does, because they both try to do a lot of the same things in terms of like, okay, here's your own adventure, and it's, generated. They're trying to find the sweet spot between like algorithm guided storytelling and like explicit author guided storytelling along with player choices. And I don't think that works out nearly as well. But here, everything just sings. It's just such a good game. It's my favorite game of the year.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's awesome to hear. Yeah. It comes down to like, if you like PC gaming with a controller, if you want to play it that way, but if you like playing games on your PC, and you're a dork, you should just buy this game. It's like one of those games where
if you're a dork, you should buy Wildermyth.
Absolutely. It's like, this is everything that's good and dorky in the world. Like the idea of, okay, you get this weapon, you get to name this weapon, then you're going to follow this weapon through the eras, and then as this character dies, you can pass it along. Like, just like everything dorky about the world is packed into this game. It's very satisfying.
And they do a good job where every piece of armor or whatever that you get, they just put it on your character, and then you can see it in all of the different, storyboard pictures as you're going through the stories. And and they add enough kind of buffs and abilities and things, and the fact that you can name like pretty much every piece that you get gives you a sense of ownership, and it makes it feel more important than, say, playing Destiny or Diablo, where it's like, oh, this is my 90th cowl and I don't give a crap about it. But here, if you get like a new suit of armor or something, it really matters because it has a big gameplay ramifications. But then your character also looks different, and it's helping build up that person's legacy in that adventure.
Yeah, it's super good about putting the consequences of your choices in front of you. Whether it's like, oh, I gave this armor or this sword to this person, and now they're going to carry it, but also like the transformation aspect, or like, if they get maimed in battle, like one of my mystics lost an arm, and he had a prosthetic hook for half the campaign. And so, whenever you see that, you're like, oh yeah, that was a consequence of a choice that I made. So it's really good. It's really good about just constantly reminding you of that in subtle ways that I don't think most choice-driven games are necessarily. Like even Mass Effect 2, which is my favorite game of all time, it doesn't necessarily display the consequences of your choices all the time, except for big moments, which is fine and good because it's, a space opera. But what I like about Wildermyth is you're constantly reminded of your choices, big and small, within literally every frame of the game. And I think that's a really hard thing to do. And it's just impressive.
For sure. Wildermyth, it's on PC only right now. I know I mentioned this before, but the developers have said that a console port's going to be tough because it's in like this custom engine that's based on Java. And so possible, but very tricky was, I think, their last official message. But I think it's doing well enough. Hopefully they can pay to brute force its way through, because it would be a great game on Switch along with every other tactics game, But Wildermyth, check it out, everybody. Okay. There's this game that's called 12 Minutes that came out a while ago. And people were very much looking forward to this. And then it came out and everyone said, what in God's name is happening with 12 Minutes? Without spoilers, because I think people were shocked about where it goes. I don't know. Jeff, did you play 12 Minutes?
I did. Oh. I got all the endings that you could ever want.
Wow.
Really?
Did you actually?
Yeah, there's not that many of them. But it's and they do a good job of like, you do one and then you go back into the next loop and you can kind of get to the next one after that.
Okay.
So it's not as impressive as it sounds, but
yeah. Well, how about this? What about this for a little thought experiment? How about everybody that's played it
your favorite minute?
Yeah. How would you convey your tone on the game, your reception of the game based on the pitch of your voice? So give like where you're at for the three of you, and we can see if we can figure out where everybody's at. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay, JV was the only one who came through Discord. I feel like we
were like in sync, but also it's because I can't understand pitch.
Okay, so everybody's a little bit down on this. It's a really great idea of a character stuck in a time loop. It resets every 12 minutes. You're trying to protect your wife. Basically, in the opening, your wife is murdered, and then, all right, you have 12 minutes stuck in a time loop, fix it. And then everything else falls apart, or what's the takeaway?
I was looking forward to this for a long time, and this is going to be this is my new excited letdown. Like I haven't felt this way since I was really hyped for Recore, and then Recore just didn't hit.
Wow, Recore,
still kills me to this day. Man, that could have been really good. But anyway, sort of my takeaway. I was looking forward to this as a game where I could kind of make some interesting decisions mechanically and kind of tinker with things. And I think my big letdown, spoilers aside, because a lot of people say like, oh, a lot of people don't like it because of the ending or whatever, because of where it goes. I had problems long before I finished the game. I just think it's really a little bit boring, and it doesn't really control that well. I played on console. I played on Series X, which I would recommend if you are still interested in checking it out. Like, to me, I think this works better on PC because it's a point and click essentially, and pointing and clicking with the cursor is a very specific kind of hell, specifically in this game. It's just a little bit finicky. I think because it has like the time constraints, like, which I understand that conceit mechanically, but even in like the moment to moment action, there are like these weird time constraints where, again, without giving something away, it's like, all right, I need to grab this item from this character. Oh, I need to do it within like 10 seconds, or he's going to get up and then I'm dead and I got to redo the loop again. Also, for clarity, it's 12-minute loops, but I'm pretty sure they're not real life 12 minutes, right? I didn't time it out, but they're like shorter than that. It's like FIFA 12 minutes, They're
gotcha,
like
of course,
shortened.
FIFA 12.
Yes, the FIFA 12, as everyone knows. But yeah, like, so it just, and I think also they give you there's a lot of layers of problems. I'm going to try not to go on too long, but they give you a lot of like things that you can interact with, but that end up being not meaningful or really used for anything.
Right.
And like, maybe you can argue that's a red herring to kind of add difficulty, but it was one of those classic things where one of my biggest complaints in like a puzzle game is when you know what to do, but it just takes a long time to execute it, and that creates frustration. I think 12 minutes suffers from that a lot. And then there are also just some times where you come up with a solution, but it's not the solution that they want you to do. And even though your solution makes sense, they're like, yeah, but that's not how we made it available. And again, I think you're allowed to have like specific solution sets. I don't think every game needs to have multiple solution sets for a single problem, but in a game that seems to invite you to play with the objects that you have as your tool set, the tool set's actually like secretly way more limited in a way that I think doesn't serve the game well. So those were kind of my beefs with it, just kind of on a surface level. Just it did not hit.
Yeah, I was going to say I appreciate and I'm really into the premise from a mechanism standpoint. The idea of basically a point and click adventure game, but you're in a time loop and you're in a very small environment and just kind of unfolding things. And when you get a revelation of another thing that you can try in the next loop, and that happens organically, that feels really good. But then it does fall into that problem of what all adventure games have, where it gets a little too obtuse, and you get to that point where it's like, well, maybe I'm gonna put the toaster in the bathtub, and maybe that will do, like you want to just kind of cycle through like brute force problem, like whatever the mystery is that you're doing. But here it's like, well, first I have to play through this 5 minutes of the sequence in order to get back to that point, and then I'm going to try something else there. And so that becomes very convoluted. And then my biggest takeaway is I just don't understand why they chose to tell the story that they chose.
That's its own problem. It
is such a bizarre, and again, like, I enjoyed probably the first half to maybe 3/4 of it, and there are some twists in there, and it's like, okay, that's interesting, and then it just dives off this cliff of like, why are you doing this?
We need to be twisty, we need to be unexpected, need to be shocking, but this is too many layers.
I just want to interject and say, like, the overall story it tells, like, it is shocking. Ooh, like, who would have guessed? But also, it's not like there's never been a story like that before. If there's a lot of examples of I think mediums telling that kind of story that are far more interesting. So like, we've seen that kind of story done well. I don't think this is an example of it being done well. I mean, yeah. I don't know. I have a literature background, so it's like, yeah, I've read stuff like this before, but like usually it's well written instead, but anyway.
But apparently that Annapurna name is enough for, Willem Dafoe, Daisy Ridley, James McAvoy to sign up for this sucker. But
and that's part of just what is so befuddling to me, of like, you're going to get all these big name actors, well, 3, I guess, to tell your story, and you're obviously going to put a lot of time and resources into it, but just the places that you choose to go with it narratively, just I don't understand.
Okay, 12 minutes. Some people seem to like it, but let's see. Starkiller said, watching us live Backstage Pass, he said, Sarah Pozorski's stream on MinnMax's Twitch channel playthrough of the game is the exact right way to experience it. I'd imagine that was a journey, watching her struggle through this game. All right, so probably not one of the year's best, but 12 minutes, they're going for it. Real quick, because I don't want to bum everybody out again, but Jett the Far Shore, which is one of Jeffem's most anticipated games of 2021. It's coming out October 5th.
In 2020. It was on my 2020 list.
That's right. For a long time, we've been looking forward to this sucker.
Been hard lately.
But this game is coming out October 5th on PS4, PS5, and PC. This is the Sword and Sorcery Super Brothers developer, their new game. We got a preview access here, and it seems like the takeaway is not so much right now. But Jeff, as somebody who is looking forward to it so much, what is your high-level takeaway at this point for Jett the Far Shore?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I really appreciate the presentation that they go with and kind of the atmosphere that they build up in the beginning. You know, there's like you're the world is doomed and stuff, and you're going to a different planet. And
sure.
And then you're exploring the planet. Like all of that is the kind of sci-fi fodder that I just absolutely love. But one of the things that I thought was going to be interesting just watching it was it kind of had a No Man's Sky, almost interstellar vibe of like, you're going to go to this weird, dangerous planet and you're going to be the one exploring it. And that's also super interesting because it is, a bespoke planet and not like procedurally generated,
right? That
there would be more interesting things to do when you get there. And the early chunk that we played, maybe it goes different places and becomes more interesting. But what you were doing, it is just ultimately kind of very bland and not interesting. Like you spend a lot of time figuring out how to kind of just fly your little plane around, and then you have very limited interactions with the world. You kind of can focus on things, and you have a little grappling hook that can kind of grab onto things, but there's not a lot of reason to want to continue exploring. And the thing that was really weird to me was you kind of go to this one big island, and they're like, okay, now just kind of interact with the fauna and like catalog things. And then they just give you a 20-minute timer. It's like, do this for 20 minutes. And it's like, man, I don't want to spend 20 minutes doing this. And then after that, there were like these little encampments that you wanted to kind of pull and put into a safe place. But one of mine like rolled down this cliff into the ocean, and then I couldn't drag it back up. And it was like it's just like it wants you to invest a lot of time into what you're doing.
Yeah.
But it's just not interesting enough to keep me wanting to continue it.
Yeah, that's tough. You'll keep checking it out, Jeffem, or you feel like you're done with Jett here?
I think, yeah, I would like to go back to it. Like I said, the presentation and the music and everything, like when those things work, it's really interesting, and it kind of evokes those feelings that kind of angsty sci-fi can give you of like Luke staring at the sunset.
Right, right.
Like it can hit on those things when it is, but there's a lot of kind of fluff and uninteresting exploration in between it. So I hope it goes more interesting places. Yep. And maybe you'll upgrade your ship and that will get more interesting. But what I played was not a good start.
Yeah. Speaking of good start, Janet, are you live right now?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. Hey, unfrozen. Welcome.
It took me out. That's how people didn't want to hear the truth, but I basically agree with Jeff and said it's not good.
Okay, that's rough to hear. Hey,
just leave it at that.
You know what is good, Janet, is you and your company. It's so good, in fact, sometimes we don't deserve it, and sometimes we need you to clap out so that a special guest can come in. Thank you, Janet. Leo Vader, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
And Leo, it's a very special day today because this episode of the podcast, do you know what it is?
Brought to you by Squarespace.
That's right, everybody. Check out Squarespace. Make a site. Make your dreams come true. GoDaddy. No, Leo, it's your freaking birthday, man.
Oh, thank you.
Happy birthday.
Oh, can we guess?
I think I'm going to go with 20.
28.
I'm gonna go with
25.
29.
28 is correct. Do you really think 25?
Yeah.
I did.
Wow.
You seem like such a young, lively boy.
All right, Jeff.
Thank you.
Now try and guess your own age.
Oh, no. I don't want to play that game.
Okay, great.
Game over.
Let's see. Leo, do you remember JV? JV, you remember Leo?
Of course. Hi, JV. Great to see you.
I vaguely remember you.
Okay,
Hi.
great.
Hi.
Hey, you know what you two have in common? A real icebreaker for the two of you? This game called The Forgotten City.
That game rules.
This game rules. It's a weird one to talk about without any spoilers, but let's see. Leo, do you want to set this sucker up? What is The Forgotten City?
It is tricky to talk about. It's kind of immersive simmy. You're in a time loop scenario talking to a bunch of different people and all these different threads, some of which pay off like within the same loop. Some of them you get information like as someone's dying and then you can use it the next loop to save them. And it's like a really interesting world with a really interesting conceit that even that core conceit, I don't know if I want to give away because it's
I think the
so much better to learn it.
premise. Am I
I
nuts,
think you
JV?
can give the core premise away.
Yeah. So the idea. Oh, go ahead, JV. You can give it away. Right
Yeah.
now.
So you end up in an ancient. You are a modern day person who ends up in an ancient sort of Roman city somewhere, and the city is governed by one rule that if you.
The golden rule is if you.
The golden rule is if anyone sins in this city, everyone dies, and you're stuck in a time loop where whenever that happens, you restart the day, and your mission is to find out. Ostensibly, your mission is to find out who the sinner is, but it goes places from there. And I think at that point we should stop talking about
for sure.
specific plot stuff.
It feels like it kind of has a similar loop to something like a Her Story or something, where it's like just kind of like good narrative focused detective game. And so just for a framework for what The Forgotten City actually looks like, it's PC only at this point, but it started as a Skyrim mod.
Is it?
Is it on a console?
I think it's on console.
Is it
I
really?
think Forgotten City is on console. I think because I saw people complaining about the PS4 version, which might not be the strongest support of the console.
Oh, okay.
Version of the game.
Well, regardless, it started as a Skyrim mod about dwarves, right? And then now it has evolved to a standalone
Dwemer.
thing to be about.
Dwemer.
I'm sorry. Please forgive me, everybody. The point is, it started as the Skyrim mod, so it feels very, very Bethesda. If you're a fan of that old Bethesda character, look at you, lock into a conversation for a while while you're trying to solve this mystery of who is sinning in this old town. Like, honestly, it is one of the greatest little hooks, because I first saw this game a while ago and was like, okay, I'm not really the biggest Elder Scrolls fan, not too sure, narrative-focused experience, we'll see. And then just that idea of, oh no, you're in this town, and if one person sins, the world ends. Like, that is such a cool idea.
Really, really interesting design decisions that have been very compelling, and just sharp writing. Like, an example of both of those is when you start, you pick kind of one thing about your character. Like maybe you're the history buff and you'll have random bits of knowledge about ancient history. Or you can sprint faster, or you are an ex-military guy and you have a gun on you that has 10 bullets and you can never get more. Did anybody else pick the gun guy?
I picked the gun guy.
No, that seems very
It's
aggressive.
so funny.
You can't
such
sin.
a funny idea. And so first thing I did, being escorted through the town by the intro guide, is shoot him in the back of the head, which does break the golden rule. That's not clear. But there's another part where a guy is threatening you and he says any last words, and the piece of dialogue that you have if you have a gun is, this is a gun and I'm going to kill you for your last words, and you pull your gun out.
That's
and there's
fun.
so many like surprisingly funny moments like that, and every character is unique enough. Like if there's 20 people in this city, so you kind of get to know everybody, which I
they
really
all
appreciate.
feel very distinct. Like they're not just like a conglomerate. They all have individual identities and crises they're going through, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. I haven't finished it yet. How long is it to finish this game? Is it kind of like a murky thing of how long you want to go through this loop for?
I mean, it depends. To get the golden rule, the golden ending,
Oh my God.
real ending you want to get, it took me 4.5 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. It seems cool. So, Leo, up there for your experiences so far this year, do you think?
Definitely. I'm only a couple hours in, but I'm definitely going to see it through, and it's among the top games of the year for me, for sure.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
it's my number 2 or 3, I think. So it's right behind Wildermyth.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's the thing that I really like about Forgotten City, and I know Jacob Geller is going to listen to this and get really frustrated, and that's fine.
Okay.
Is that when Outer Wilds came out, people talked about how great that game was as like a sort of time looping thing, a time looping adventure and stuff. And I never really got on with it because it was just a little too rough for me to like. And I was in the minority, to be fair. It seems like the whole world loves that game.
Yeah.
But what I love about the Forgotten City is that it takes the pillars or seemingly takes like the design pillars of the Outer Wilds and puts them in a more constrained, controlled environment. And for someone like me, like, that's great. I love it. I can finally see like, oh, this is the time loop mechanics are so much fun to play with here because they create shortcuts too. Like there are some very good shortcut mechanics, so you don't actually have to relive a lot of the events. There are a lot of funny dialogue options that are like, we've done this. We've talked about this. Let's go. Skip this sort of thing.
Right.
And that's very smart. It's stuff that like Outer Wilds doesn't really have. It's stuff that 12 Minutes doesn't have.
Right.
Because I think there's maybe some fear there about breaking the time loop thing if you make players not live out that repetition. But the Forgotten City says, screw that. That'll get annoying. So they have those options there. And I love that. I really, really do love that. Yeah. So I like the Forgotten City a lot.
In conclusion, good game.
In conclusion.
Yeah.
It sounds like I played the wrong time loop game.
Yeah, you really blew it, Jeff. You should have been playing the Forgotten City, it turns out. And yeah, it turns out you guys are completely right. It's available on absolutely everything, coming to Switch next year as well, is what they say. So it's on consoles and PC. So yeah, Jeff, you should check it out.
I will say that I do really like that you can see the Bethesda genes in it still. Like, my favorite thing is when you talk to someone, because I've been playing a lot of Skyrim and Oblivion lately, but when you try and talk to an NPC, they do like the whole awkward turnaround to look at you in the face.
Oh, yeah.
It's very robotic animatronic thing. It's still there, and I love it. I wish all NPC animations in all video games were like that. It's so good.
Do you really want to cash that wish? Do you really want to damn
I
the
really
world?
do.
Well, hey, that's the Forgotten City, everybody. Leo?
Huh?
Leo, are you there?
Yeah.
This is me on a podcast coming to you. Riders Republic is a beta. Riders Republic is a beta that happened, and you played it, and you had thoughts on it, and now you'll talk about it to the crowd.
Oh no, 10 years of podcasting has finally run its course. Got nothing left.
This is the big racing game from Ubisoft where you race a little bit of everything. It's a spiritual successor to One Extreme, some would say. But yeah, what do you think about Riders Republic so far, Leo?
Super cool. I mean, the beta, I played a few hours of it, and it kind of brings you from event to event to event, so I didn't get a sense of the open world or the shop or anything like that.
Yeah.
But the using skis, using bikes, using snowboards, it's cool how they have it all in one kind of unified control scheme of like you're flipping and you're spinning, and then there's a button to do tricks. But if you can ride one thing, you can kind of ride them all, even though they do feel different. And that made it really easy and fast to get on board with every, pun intended, with every different sport they have in there, which is a lot of them.
Yeah, what is it now?
Snowboarding, skiing, BMXing, jet air gliding. I think that one's made up. Those are just the ones I did in the beta, though. I could see little like graphics that represented more of them.
That's absurd, and it's unified enough where it feels like Smash Brothers characters or something. It's like you get the basic controls jumping from one to the other, but each one's just gonna have its own flavor there.
Right, but each one's gonna have its own flavor, but they all feel good right away. And just like the downhill biking, that's been gamified in a lot of ways, but this to me is the perfect mix of like stylish and you're doing double backflips and crazy stuff, but it still feels great and looks great, like the dirt flying up and the fidelity of the bikes and all the other riders. I think it's a really good mix of realism levels for me.
Huh, so better than you thought it would be even.
Yeah, I'd say that. I was already excited for it, but
Yeah.
and now I'm going to get it for sure.
Wow. There we go. Yeah. It's October 28th. Yeah, October's going to be a big month for Ubisoft. That's wild. Hey, do you guys want to move on?
Okay.
Jeff?
Move.
Okay. Well, hey, before we do, we should let everybody know that if you appreciate this show, you can support it. Hang on, let me try this again. This is a very specific phrase that I'm trying out, Leo. I'm workshopping a little bit. It goes, if you appreciate this show, you can support it or join it at patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's. Does that work, do you think?
Join it, like send an email that we'll read, a community question?
Yeah, community question. Yep, or Backstage Pass, watch us live, all that stuff. Does that work as a concept, do you think?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, YouTube has a join thing. Are we going to get on that?
I don't know what that means. What does that mean?
You can get a big join button and then you pay $5 a month or whatever and you get exclusive YouTube videos.
I like to think of our big join button as people going on their keyboards and typing in patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's, everybody. We appreciate the support, even if JV is vigorously shaking his head.
You should never say our big join button ever again.
All right. Hey, look at this, though. Lucas, a fellow patron, wants you to check out his YouTube channel, Fatal X Blade. That's right, Fatal X Blade with 2 spaces. His YouTube channel is primarily focused on highly edited reviews on the newest games. His reviews feature a short parody at the beginning of each video. He just finished a review on Aliens Fireteam Elite and is wrapping up Psychonauts 2 as we speak. So head on over to his channel, subscribe, and drop him a comment. Any feedback would be greatly appreciated. That's Fatal X Blade, the YouTube channel. Leo, remember when you were just starting out your YouTube channel and you savored every comment like it was somebody throwing a slice of bread into your prison cell?
Yeah, hearted every single one.
Well, there you go. Give Lucas something to heart by going and checking out a Fatal X Blade video on YouTube. Lucas, thank you so much for your support. We appreciate it. Also, thanks to our dear friends at I Am 8-Bit. They want everybody to know that you can get the vinyl soundtrack for Mutazione. It's a double vinyl soundtrack with immersive garden gatefold. It includes the extensive liner notes, music by Alessandro Coronas, album art by Niels Deniken. You can check that out on their wonderful online store. I Am 8-Bit. Check out their store. Everything in that store you can get 10% off of under $100 if you use the promo code for this month, which is Wake Me Up. No space. Wake Me Up. You get 10% off everything in I Am 8-Bit's wonderful online store, so help support them because they support us in a big way, including in a very tangible way by shipping out a prize every single week to the MinnMax community. Whoever has the best question of the week, and JV, this week, whoever has the best question gets the vinyl copy of Junebug's Too Late to Love You from Kentucky Route Zero.
Hold on.
Hang on. JV's about to blow us away.
Hold on.
But I assume
He's writing an email right now.
I had to go. Yeah.
Oh, that is exactly what we're talking about. That's wild.
Yeah.
So I Am 8-Bit will ship out a copy for you if you submitted a great question. They give away a prize each and every week to Patreon supporters. Thanks, everybody.
It's very good.
Yeah, there it is. All right, community questions. Here we go. Goes a little something like this. Deep Space Trace writes in and says, in your opinion, what is the perfect length for a gaming session? I used to think 3 hours was a sweet spot, but now I have 2 small children. Even just 1 continuous hour is golden. I think 2, personally.
I'm a 2-man.
Yeah, 2-man.
I feel like COVID changed it for me because like so much of my life now is like I work and play in the same space, if that makes sense. And I think that drastically changes my need to like go out and do something else or like go into another room and watch a movie or something. So I want to say like it used to be 4 hours for certain games and now it's just like 2, unless we're playing Phasmophobia or Dead by Daylight. And then it just goes on as long as like until we're ready to disperse.
Yeah, then it seems like your life is nothing but a consistent rotation of 2-hour blocks of gaming because you are still playing a mind-boggling amount of games. Like you said you were getting into, what was it, going back into Skyrim and Oblivion, then at the same time you're getting back into Destiny 2? Like, what is your life? It's absurd.
Well, I only play those like bits and pieces. Like I played Skyrim for like 2 months and wrapped that up recently. I had a rad playthrough as an orc who just beat everything to death. I don't usually play like barbarian or knight sort of like stuff. I usually am a rogue, so I've been like trying to branch out and play as like knights and mages and stuff. So I wrapped that up. Oblivion's more of a like, let's poke the weird parts of this very weird game and see the most interesting stuff because I've never done like a really big playthrough of that. But yeah, Destiny's also like, I don't think I'm going to do everything in that game. I'm more like catching up in Destiny.
Right.
And just, Destiny is such a weird experience for me because it's one of those things of like, I come at it as like an artifact that I'm looking at as rather as like something I love because it's just such a confusingly designed game, like where it puts its priorities. Like you can't access a bunch of the stuff that the game launched with, apparently, and I didn't know that. It's just so aggressively unkind to casual and new players. And you know, that's not it's a fascinating choice to me. You know, I don't say that as like necessarily like a strong, harsh criticism. It's just one of bewilderment of like, so are you focused just on retaining an audience and not necessarily growing it? Because that's what that game feels like to me, is like they've caught the players that they want and they're not really interested in expanding those borders. So it's just that part of that game is fascinating to me, and it's one that I've been trying to understand for like the past ever since like Destiny came out. You know, it just seems like it's the elements that Destiny chooses to emphasize and the ones that it chooses to say, nah, or we're going to do the bare amount of work. Like it's more of like a thing that I try to study as opposed to something like I have a lot of fun with.
Yeah.
So that's the Destiny story.
Okay. And that's what you do in your 2-hour sessions then, is you just study, you take notes?
Yes, that's exactly. Just take notes.
Jeff, are you down to 6 minutes with a newborn now?
I'll take whatever time I can get. Yeah.
But what is perfect?
Ideal, I'd say probably 90 minutes, 2 hours. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
All of it's dedicated to Red Dead Redemption 2, right?
Of course. Yeah.
I was just listening to old audio logs I leave behind for myself in the future from like 2018. And I was talking about how I always look forward to Saturdays and I'm like, I'm going to do nothing but game out. I'm just going to chill and game out the whole day. And the audio log was like, I say that every week and then I always hate it. I'm always in such a bad mood by the end of Saturday. And I think that's about, you know, variety being the spice of life. Certainly if you're mixing between a single player game and a social game or different types of games you like, it's different. But it's like, I want to do nothing but play this game. That normally doesn't really pan out. And I feel like the 2 hours for me is the sweet spot of like, I've had the most fun I'm going to have, and I can take a break and come back to it later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think reviews at Game Informer kind of ruined binging games for me. Like I used to be super into it, but like after I had to rush the Prey review over a weekend, after that, it just became one of those things of like, I'm not doing this anymore. I can't play a game for like 10, 15 hours straight. It's just work. It feels like work at that point.
Yeah, and it changes your perspective on it in such a potentially negative way as well when it's just that level of a grind. But I thought for sure, Leo, you're going to say you had a little audio note for yourself that was, never forget how good the second half of Red Dead Redemption 2 is. Unbelievable storytelling.
Leo, I still just can't. I thought you were joking about leaving yourself audio logs. You're like a character from a video game. Someday you're going to disappear, and 20 years from now, we're going to go to your house and we're just going to explore and look for those and try and piece together the narrative.
I was very confused for a second because I thought Leo was joking and saying he was uncovering notes somehow that he had left for himself from the future. So like World of Tomorrow sort of thing of like, here's a message from 20 years, Leo, from now. But yeah, this makes much more sense than that. I would be curious to hear what 40-year-old Leo would leave, or 48-year-old Leo would leave as a note, though.
Working on my new poison today. Hope it doesn't go wrong.
Leo, do you want to use this opportunity to leave a note for yourself for when you're 40? Just like a real quick shout out.
Sure, just into the podcast?
Yeah, so everybody remember, because it's Leo's birthday today, so everybody send this to him on his 40th birthday. Yeah, just this little clip right here. Here it goes.
Hey, bud. Wow, over the hill, huh? That's amazing. You made it. Or you're dead. Either way, congratulations. I hope you've made a lot of great progress in your life. You've already done great at 28. Can't imagine what you'll get up to by 40. Love you.
There it is. And we don't tell each other that we love ourselves enough. And by that, I mean, we don't tell ourselves that we... The point is, we should tell each other that we love each other. Hey,
a lot of my alarms on my phone say, get up right now, love you. because they're really abrasive to have to wake up at 7 a.m. and it's nice to look at your phone first thing in the morning and see that instead of just like get to work or you'll die, you know?
Yeah, interesting. Hey, VRG writes in and says, what are your habits regarding caffeine consumption? How much do you consume daily? How do you take your coffee and tea?
I've got better about it, but 2 years ago I was really bad. I'd have like 4 or 5 cups of coffee a day. Now it's pretty much 2. And I just get up in the morning and make a French press for me and my partner, Audrey. And then later in the day, I usually have like an espresso, which has less caffeine. So it's like a cup and a half worth of coffee, caffeine-wise.
How are you doing on days where you don't get that coffee? Say you're traveling, out on a trip or something. Like when you're at that 5 cup a day, if you didn't get it by noon, was your head caving in on itself?
I mean, you were with me for several of those trips. You know the answer to that.
Oh, that's why you were grumpy.
Yeah, that's why I was grumpy. I was either hungry or deprived of caffeine. Yes.
I see. Yeah, that was my issue. That's why I quit caffeine a couple years ago now. It was just that idea of like, I hate having that ticking clock if I'm traveling or out of my normal rhythm, which should be a thing to celebrate. But instead now I just have like this meter in my mind of like, if I don't get a Starbucks or something dumb by like 10, I'm going to feel terrible. And it's just like, it's very liberating to quit caffeine and not have that pressure anymore. And the secret is I'm exactly as awake as anybody else. Like there's eventually it evens out and it's not like everybody around me is staying up later than I am. It's like, no, your body just gets used to whatever you're doing. That's about it.
Yeah.
I think I love coffee too much. It's bad. Out of all the things you can love in life too much, though, there are worse things. So
Yeah.
I think I'll stick with coffee. But I totally respect that. You know, I can imagine there are definitely health benefits to not drinking caffeine at all.
I don't know what they'd be realistically. There could be too much realistically.
Not being grumpy on airplanes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I love coffee and I love the routine of coffee and the taste of coffee, but I really came to realize how dependent I was on it, like how screwed I was if I didn't have it earlier this year. So I've quit it since then. And I quit it kind of cold turkey, but now I have it when I'm like hanging out with friends or whatever. We'll go out to the coffee shop and it's like fun for me to have in that case as a little treat. And then it's like, you know, a mood picker upper without it being like becoming routine for me again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I save a good blast of decaf for. And I know I remember it being the worst thing, but now decaf coffee is the best thing in my mind. Probably secretly because there's still a little bit of caffeine in there, so it feels like you're really cheating the system.
Yeah.
And it's like drinking flat pop or something. But if you're really into pop, this is the best you can do. Jeff, what are you doing? You sipping tea all day?
But I'm a tea guy, yeah.
Big
But
tea man.
the secret is I only use one tea bag and then I just keep filling it up. So by like halfway through the day, I'm basically just drinking warm water.
Yeah.
Interesting. Just chugging
Jeff,
warm water.
we were talking about this earlier. Do you still have your Godfather mug?
I do. Is it at your place, Hanson?
No, I have the mug that we got.
Oh, you have the mug of me drinking from the Godfather.
Yeah, we have a MinnMax mug, which you can find in our merch store, which is Jeffem in the shape of his old Godfather mug, drinking from his Godfather mug. And yeah, that's the one that I've been using every day for quite a while now, Jeffem. So thank you for leaving that here.
Yeah, this owl mug is my everyday mug, and so I don't have a work mug anymore.
Yeah,
because I'm at home. So.
Hey, my name is Dan. Submits a question over on Patreon. It says, hello, friends. Do any of you have a favorite post-credit scene from a video game? Yes, we do.
Post-credit scene. Man. I'm trying to think of some.
I mean, in my mind, there's only one post-credit scene that really matters, and it's Metal Gear Solid 1, the post-credit scene where it's just Ocelot on the phone, and then he ends it with, yes, he believes he's the inferior twin, Mr. President. It is the dopiest ending, but I remember just losing it the first time that showed up. Like, what? Ocelot knows the president? Little did I know where that story would go.
Does Samus being revealed to be a woman, does that count as like post-credit, or is that, I can't even remember.
That's just ending more than post-credit, right?
Yeah, I just couldn't remember if there were credits. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm going through my top 10 right now, and I don't think any of them have post-credit scenes.
They should just have no matter what the game is, at the end of the credits, have one character talking on the phone and then end it with Mr. President. Just everybody.
And then one finally goes, Mrs. President.
Wow, save that for
twist.
Metroid Dread.
I like the Portal one they added. That teased Portal 2.
Oh, that's right. Of her like being pulled back in.
Yeah, because there was originally a post-credit scene, right?
I don't.
Were you just lying there and we're getting pulled back, or am I misremembering?
I don't
All
think
I remember
there
is the hype
was.
around them changing the ending.
It is a crazy move, like to take Portal 1's ending and then be like, yeah, but no, actually, Chell didn't make it out. Get ready for Portal 2, everybody.
Oh,
Yeah.
weird. I assumed that. I thought that was in. Did they add that in, Leo, after? Oh, okay. Maybe that's because I played the game later, but I always thought that was in there for whatever reason. It's just like, oh, okay. It's probably because I bought the orange box or whatever at a later date.
Sure.
Yeah.
Stephen Lamson writes in and says, who has been your favorite main character from video games that have been released in the past 3 years? Mine would have to be Jesse from Control, but I'm having trouble thinking of any other main characters that left a big impression on me.
Is Red Dead still 3 years old?
That's 2018. Yeah, that counts. Right?
Well, if Red Dead doesn't count, probably
does.
I don't want to say his name because it's a huge part of that game, but the main character from Disco Elysium, I think, is pretty big for me.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think
Iconic design too. Memorable.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think there's anyone else that like immediately jumps to mind.
Yeah, I forgot that. Yeah, Red Dead 2 would count here. And Jeff, I'm not trying to give you crap. You can even look away if you want. Yeah, but Arthur Morgan, I mean, by a landslide would be the answer. But my mind really went to
Last of Us Part 2. I have problems with that game. But,
sure.
Abby.
Yeah,
Abby.
Okay.
For sure.
Light spoilers for Last of Us Part 2, everybody. Ichiban from Yakuza 7. Yakuza Like a Dragon, I should say. That's certainly up there for me. So that and Arthur.
That's the same sort of thing as Arthur, right? Of like, how do you pivot away from this character who has like come to define the series with a new character and make him like nearly as likable, but in a very different way? It's super impressive, Ichiban.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh boy, we got Shipwright jumping over there on Patreon and saying, hey everybody, I've been hearing a lot of buzz about this new game, The Forgotten City, that's out, and hearing the title reminded me of my favorite Skyrim mods of the same name from back in the day. There we go. What a coincidence, I thought. Imagine my surprise when I checked its website and found out this game actually is based off of that original mod that I played so long ago. This leads to my question, is there any mod/add-on to a game that you think genuinely improved the overall experience or rekindled a love for an old favorite? Thank you. Love the show. Thank you, Shipwright.
I'm not sure I understand the question. Like a mod that was like took me back to an old game and I was like, oh yeah, this rules or something.
I think just a mod a mod/add-on to a game that overhauled the experience and kind of rekindled it.
Man, I don't know if it counts. Well, it started as a mod, so it counts. Black Mesa, I think. For Half-Life.
Okay. That's good.
Like I went back and finally played like the whole thing, at least like what they had up until now. I know they're adding the Zen parts now, but
right.
It's just they focused on the right parts to improve of the original Half-Life experience, I feel like.
Yeah, I think it's a good one.
Blade and Sorcery is probably the most recent game I've modded. It's a VR game that has really visceral sword combat, and people have added really visceral gun combat and lightsaber combat, etc.
Oh,
that's the one game I've seen so far where people try and like get the John Wick kind of combat into a video game, and that seems to be the closest one of just like being able to like experience all those ridiculous sort of cartoony gun kata moves from John Wick and from a first person perspective. That seems to be really the only one that I've seen like videos of that's like where it's convincing and not janky.
Right. Christopher Reardon writes in and says, hey, JV, do you have any thoughts on the current state of accessibility in gaming? Has your role in the PR world given you any more insight on that matter?
I mean, I'll work backwards on that. Not really from a PR perspective, just because I haven't had that much contact with like writing any accessibility stuff up or like doing any press blast or releases about it. So no, but I will say like I've watched, how accessibility has like progressed since I left the media, and it's getting better. It's getting better all the time, but it's that sort of thing of like it's not good enough yet, I'd say, because the dream is that everyone should be able to play whatever game they want, no matter what their disability is, and I think that's a pretty good high point to stick with. But like some of the, I'm really impressed that Microsoft has stuck to its guns with like, making accessibility a huge sort of hardware and software focus. Nintendo's still really bad at it. That kind of sucks considering that like there are so many beloved games there. Like they really need to make an effort. Sony's getting better at it. They're still not as good at it as Xbox is, just because they don't make hardware accommodations. Like they're still firmly planted within software territory, which is important, right? Like, the fact that so many people can play Uncharted, The Last of Us, Ratchet and Clank, all the Sony first-party exclusives, and have a multitude of options available to them that weren't available 5 or 6 years ago. That's a huge deal, and I think that deserves to be praised, but it can always be better. Accessibility can always be better.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Poor Frisco writes in and says, I'm wondering what naming convention was once the most absurd thing you could think of when you first heard it and you're used to it now. I remember people mocking the name Joy-Cons relentlessly at the time, and now it doesn't seem to bother anybody. On the other hand, calling the weird PSP discs in plastic cases Universal Media Discs still seems stupid years later. Yeah, this stuff, like my first instinct was like, oh, Xbox One? But then it's like, no, that's still stupid. I still get tripped up on that, and the idea of calling it Xbox One is still confusing, so I don't know if that quite counts.
Is this just acronyms or just names in general?
I think just names in general, yeah.
I still, at the time, I remember when, I know you said Joy-Cons, but the Switch, I think we kind of snickered around the office when that was announced, right? Like, people were like, the Switch? Like, and then, of course, they did the little audio clip of like it switching into place and like, oh, all right, and being able to switch, take it on the go. So eventually it stuck, but initially, like most people at GI, I felt, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I still remember that being kind of like the immediate reaction was like, oh, that's kind of weird and dumb. And eventually it made sense.
Yeah.
But that was definitely my reaction, was like, all right.
Yeah.
I remember making fun of the name Left 4 Dead.
Yeah.
It is pretty silly,
really stupid,
and now it's just a brand, It's just
it's a genre, baby.
That's true. You're right. God, that's crazy.
I think we also don't appreciate how nonsensical Metal Gear Solid is.
Hey, no, it's perfect. It's perfect.
That is,
when I was a kid and I heard Metal Gear Solid, my reaction was like, "That's rad." Like, just because it's like so many like heavy metal words next to each other.
Especially when you find out the location in this game is Shadow Moses. Like, that's the coolest sounding thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, when I was like 10 or 11 or whatever, I was like, yeah, that's rad. I love that.
I remember talking about that game once, and a girlfriend at the time was like, What are you saying? Muddaga Solid? And I was like, oh, no, I'm sorry. I said it fast. It's Metal Gear Solid. It doesn't make any more sense.
It makes it any better.
Oh, yeah.
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 And don't be confused. It's not Solid, according to Kojima, because the main character's name is Solid Snake. It's Solid because of the 3D polygons are solid. That was his explanation of the name. Like, oh, got it. Okay,
Makes
cool.
perfect sense.
Yeah. I think one that's high up for me is PUBG. The fact that we're all very used to just saying PUBG, just nonsense. And it's like, oh, of course, PUBG, one of those important games in the history of gaming at this point, the history of the industry, which, there was news this week that Brendan Green, Mr. PlayerUnknown himself, left the company, and now he's forming a new indie studio out there in Amsterdam, which I'm very curious to see what he does. I was looking forward to that weird prologue survival thing he was working on that they teased a while ago, but I don't know if that'll stay in development or what. But
crazy it overcame that name to be as big as it was.
I know. Yeah. I remember like the first stream we did back at Game Informer was like Dan Tack and I playing PUBG. I remember talking about it and saying like PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, there has to be a better thing to call this. And then I remember somebody in the chat being like, people are calling it PUBG. And I was like, no, that's stupid.
It's such a bummer because I feel like I'm still forever, whenever I load up a Battle Royale game, I'm still kind of chasing that first experience I had with PUBG where I had a tense standoff with someone in a house. and they were just like, I don't shoot, I can trade, and then I shot them by accident, like just because I was so scared. So it became like this scene from The Road, you know. Like I feel like I still miss that, you know, and I don't know if I can ever get that sort of like experience back in that genre. Of course, it's like you know, evolved since then in really cool and exciting ways, like Apex and stuff. But still, like when PUBG launched,
So much fun.
like it felt like the Wild West, right? Like there's just so many experiences you could have within a single match. It's so good.
Yeah, maybe I just need to go back and play more battle royales. But yeah, I'm skeptical that anything could match just the adrenaline and just like the stories generated from that first couple months span with PUBG. That was just some of the best.
Yeah.
Truly the finest round. Leo, can we play PUBG for New Show Plus?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Joey Crundwell writes in and says, hey, Ben and CLCs, for whatever reason, I often find myself thinking of a story that Dan Shu, former editor-in-chief of EGM, once shared. Apparently, the old EGM editors would have job applicants play a video game in front of them to prove they actually played games and weren't faking it on their applications. Once, he said, a guy showed up and had no idea how to play the game or even hold the controller. Thanks for the great content. Please consider doing Chrono Cross for the deepest dive in the future. You got it, Joey. I'd put the odds at 50% within the next couple of years we'll do Chrono Cross. But I just found that story horrifying. Can you imagine that idea? I was like, all right, now we'll sit on this panel and watch you play a game.
Do you think you would have gotten the job?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. People have seen me play games in videos. Yeah, it would have been horrific.
Yeah, that's a nightmare for sure. Like
Yeah,
even people who are
I'm
good at games, I'm sure just would choke under that kind of pressure. But nowadays, you know, you got to be streaming them. You got to be prepared to play under pressure. These days.
That's right. Everybody's
That's
training
right.
for this job
I
interview.
saw a little bead of sweat go down your head, Leo, when you said that. Are you feeling the pressure right now? Thinking about your next stream?
Oh, God.
Never applying for a job again.
Frankie Rough Knight writes in and says, congratulations on 100 episodes. Thank you. My question is regarding inclusion in games. Now, as a gay man gaming since the 90s, I've been very happy to see our medium evolve, not just in leaps and bounds, but those evolve, just not in leaps and bounds, but those very precious gems that do get me very happy. The Last of Us Part 2 had Ellie as an openly gay woman, but can you all think of examples of gay men as characters in gaming? BioWare's games have given me some great options, but you think it's still too early for gay men to be the main characters in a story-driven game?
No, I don't think it's ever too early. I don't like thinking about it in those terms. I like to think about it in terms of like people just haven't done it yet. But I would love to see like a major action sort of RPG or like a AAA sort of game with like a lead who is like very gay and openly gay. Like I think that'd be really cool. But yeah, I don't think there's that many characters who at least you can play as, right? Who are men who are gay. I know there are like characters like NPCs that are gay, like Bill from The Last of Us.
Sure.
is one. Who is it from Dragon Age Inquisition? Is it Dorian? Is that his name?
No clue.
Okay. But yeah, BioWare character, it sucks. There should be like, I feel like there should be like an openly gay man as like a protagonist. That'd be great.
Of course.
There
I
should be
find
like-
the pattern to be that you will get an NPC who says the word boyfriend once.
Right.
And even that will be enough to have people, you know, protest the game. And I have noticed that there have been more, you know, gay women characters than gay male characters in gaming. And it makes you think about like who they think they're targeting and whether they're like, well, even if we make this girl character straight, then the romance would be with a guy, and there are straight guy
Right.
players that we got to cater to going to be okay with that kind of plot. Like, is it more palatable to them to be entangled with a woman?
I think that's exactly where it's coming from. I think it's like, I don't know if they would focus test this type of stuff, but that idea that I think guys would be more comfortable playing as a gay woman than a gay guy.
Yeah, and it sucks. It's so limiting and stupid.
Yeah, it's very frustrating that like I feel like there's so many spaces in games where people can only like really see themselves as like, you know, these blank sort of slate characters that you can create in RPGs and stuff, which that's great that option's there, but I really do think, it'd be great if more diverse people had options to like see themselves as like the center of like a AAA franchise or something, because I do think that matters. I think that matters a lot to people. So yeah, I would love to see that personally.
Yeah, of course. I was Googling around because I'm like, there has to be some character that I'm not thinking of here. And like just Googling, is the most popular gay man character Soldier 76? Is he? That's like one of those things that they announced like a couple years in development. Like, by the way, Soldier 76 is gay. Moving on.
We did it.
Is that the best this industry's got for like playable characters?
I mean, does chat know? Is anyone filling chat?
No, yet. Let us know. I remember David Jaffe did say that there were gay characters in Jett Moto, which I went back and dug through to try and find that, and I couldn't find that, but I would love to know how they represent that in the game. But so Jett Moto protagonist and Soldier 76. But please let us know who we're not thinking of. Dan Villone writes in and says, "Hey gang, my son will soon be old enough to start playing video games, so I wanted to know how you think I should introduce him to games. Here are the options. Number 1, kids these days don't appreciate how far games have come. Let's start with the Super Mario Brothers on NES Classic, then move on to Super Nintendo Classic, then PS1, and so on. Number 2, hang on, Leo, hear him out. Number 2, screw the old systems, boomer. This kid is playing on the PS5 from day one. I'm leaning towards option 1, but what are your thoughts?"
I think if there's a healthy middle ground for sure, I think if you go fully option 1, that's how you get your child to hate gaming and probably you.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And to run away probably as soon as they can walk.
I agree to be a compromise, but maybe not as strongly as Leo in those strong terms. But Leo, what would you say would be the divider then? Like what year or what game would you start your kid off with? What would you start Leo Jr. off with?
I think it should just be like mostly new stuff, some old stuff for historical context and for family bonding time. I think is mostly how it's going to go.
Totally.
Unless your children really love Mario, and I'm out of the loop on that.
Honestly, I'd probably, if I had a kid, let's hope I don't ever. But if I had a kid, I'd probably put Ratchet and Clank in front of them. Like that comes to mind recently. Like, that's just a really fun modern game that feels like I'm playing through a Saturday morning cartoon. Like that'd probably be the one I'd let them play.
I think that'd be pretty tough for something to start out with, but it all depends on ages. But yeah, generally I've evolved to the point of be a let the past die person. Option 2 all the way, but absolutely make it like a special event. Like, all right, this Sunday is Daddy's retro game day. Look at this. This is Oregon Trail. Do you like this game? And then they'll spit their Cheerios in your face and you can call it a day.
Obviously, I'm being hyperbolic. And there are cases where like my dad showed me stuff he watched when he was a kid and it like shaped my personality. Like it was such an important part of my childhood. Like watching The Prisoner, this weird ass show.
Hell yeah.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
That show is great and it still influences like a lot of the stuff I do. So it's, worth doing in moderation for sure.
Right. You're just talking about how your dad drug you to 2001 when it was in the theaters again. That's awesome. And Jeff, as the only person with a child, you haven't spoken up yet, which is interesting.
Yeah. I question the premise of it completely in terms of, hey, I'm going to sit you down and you're going to learn about video games now. Like making it a big introduction kind of thing. I think just like play games that are age appropriate so you're not blowing up heads or whatever. And then they'll probably just want to join in and play with you. And I hope they're not like, okay, sit down, here's your controller, try this thing. Ooh, I hope you enjoy it.
No, that's not how you do it.
Give me the...
You're doing it wrong.
For the record, was your baby crying in the background as you were answering that?
He's freaking out. You can hear that? It's coming through the mic.
Is your wife making him play Mario 2?
Yes, and that's the problem.
Oh my God.
Don't start with the classics.
Zach Eink writes in and says, "Hey everybody, do you think the average person, we're talking average person, completes more games per year or reads more books per year?" Keyword is completes.
Oh,
that's a great question.
I think games.
Completes a game, or he doesn't say complete a book. He says reads. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. It is completes games or books.
Games.
I think games.
That's
Yeah.
a really good question. I also think games. I only started reading recently, and like literally there was a 10-year period where I didn't finish a book.
Oh my God in heaven.
That is a good
That's
question.
an accomplishment.
Yeah.
I want to say books just because there's still an age cliff there, I feel like.
Yeah.
But then I'm almost 40, so I don't know how high that cliff goes up at this point.
But at the same time, like the completes thing, I think might shift it to books, because if it's like I'm talking to average gamer on the street and they say, I like Madden, I like Call of Duty, I could say, have you completed either?
Flash mob?
Yeah. If you ask if they've completed those games, they would spit their Cheerios in your face. Like,
I don't know. Would you at least beat Call of Duty's campaign? Or like my cousins who aren't super deep gamers into the gamer sphere, they're still like, oh, did you play Last of Us 2? I just finished it. You know?
I guess.
Or Spider-Man, like the big PlayStation tentpole titles.
okay,
But we're talking average. We're talking all people, right?
all people.
All people love gaming.
So there's a lot of people who, and I would think that like the percentage of people who play games, a lot of them would still be like mobile games. That's going to be like
Right.
the mainstream touch tone. And I don't know. Yeah, there's no finish to Candy Crush or whatever.
What do you think is the most completed book on planet Earth? Front to back
Right.
completed.
Oh,
That's a-
If you
Great
give a
question,
mouse a
too.
cookie.
Oh, of course. Yeah, Green
Yeah.
Eggs and Ham.
yeah, it'd be a child's book. I feel like Dr. Seuss, one of the Dr. Seuss books.
Yeah.
Somebody stops reading those to their kid. 10 pages in. Now this sucks.
What else you got? Have you read children's books yet to your little wee one, Jeffem?
Yeah, we read some. Very Goodnight Mouse or Goodnight
Moon?
Moon. Yeah,
If you give a moon a
You
cookie?
read?
I just look at the pictures.
All right, all right.
There's like a mouse guy in this one.
The mittens and porridge look important for some reason.
He's up to something. The Uncharted Wolf writes in and says, hello, MinnMax Warlords. Oh, hello. Have you ever
right.
started something, be it game or any other piece of media, knowing full well you'll never finish it? I started watching One Piece the other day, and while I'm loving it, I can't help but feel I'll never get past 900 episodes. Yeah, you won't. Yeah, starting something when you know there's no chance of completing it. Has anybody got a saga there?
Love Island. They're
Oh.
50 episode seasons
What?
because they air them like 4 or 5 nights a week straight until it's over because it happens in real time and people vote and stuff. We started a Love Island UK season 5 on recommendation from a friend, me and my girlfriend. We're like, we'll check this out, but 50 episodes, come on. But we did finish that season. I don't know if we'll ever watch another one because our friend who is recommending them says nothing else comes close. But I do recommend Love Island UK season 5 despite it being that long. It was
50?
a thrill ride. 50 episodes.
I don't think I can do that, man. That is too much.
It's fair.
I'm out.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I start things, everything I start with the intent of finishing it, even if it doesn't pan out. So I don't ever explicitly like go, I'm going to watch this or play this or read this and then dip out at a certain point. It just happens. But I like to try and like complete things that I start.
Yes, I'm totally with you. Next time your wonderful partner Audrey walks by the background, by the way, JV, you should thank her for the wonderful merch she made for MinnMax.
Audrey, Ben says thank you for the wonderful merch that you made for MinnMax.
She made a Chrono Trigger shirt and stuff, everybody. Thanks, Audrey. She's getting closer to the mic. She's saying something.
They want you to say something. I don't know.
There it is, a solitary wave. Thanks, Audrey. Hey, look at this, though. Sassy Luchador says, hello, MinnMaxers. Loving this show and here to a 1,000 more episodes. You betcha, Sassy. Having tried the Riders Republic beta, I had to unfortunately listen to its cringy dialogue, which included words like rad and, quote, that was money.
Come on. We're not allowed to say rad anymore.
There's nothing wrong with rad, okay?
Yeah,
I
and
sign off all my emails saying rad. There's
Some
nothing
things
wrong
are
with
just rad.
Yeah.
Like JV's emails.
it. Every single one.
Here's my question. What game has the cringiest dialogue?
Heavy Rain. It's not even close.
Ooh,
I was going to
hang
say I don't know what game, but David Cage made it.
Hang on, not even close. I mean, you're competing with Blasto, which is pretty rough in a lot of spots. You're competing with I don't know.
Those other games try as hard. And are they vaunted as the peak of video game storytelling?
So it has to be serious. It thinks it's good, and then that's what makes
the
it
problem.
cringe.
Is Heavy Rain is so far up its own about how good it thinks it is, and the dialogue is so bad.
I need to go back and stream that thing at some point.
You really don't.
I think it'd be a silly stream though. See, because I was thinking Resident Evils, even something as great as Resident Evil 4, where'd everybody go? Bingo. It's is that just charming at that point? Does that still count as cringe?
Yeah, no, I think it's charming. I don't think it's really cringe. For it to be cringe, it has to be. I feel for me at least, it has to think too highly of itself.
Right.
And Resident Evil 4 is just so over the top and great and goofy. It's really hard for me to be oh, that dialogue's awful, because it's drip. It's just pulp, man.
But just about every Ethan line in 7 and 8 I would call cringe. And that, I think, across the Resident Evil franchise, you might have more cringe lines than any other franchise.
Yeah.
I think there's a contender there, yeah. I was thinking of World of Final Fantasy, which is a game that most Final Fantasy fans don't even acknowledge exists, but it released. It was a big deal. But that's what it's so many JRPGs, especially if they're voiced like that, there's going to be a lot of cringe blowhardiness packed in there somewhere.
Ooh,
Life is Strange got a lot of flack.
It did. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's on the self-serious line, though. It's if you're proclaiming yourself to be a serious story that cares about characters in a big bad way, and then you misstep.
Which is the Devil May Cry game with all the bad, not the oh so bad it's good, but just bad sort of puns and dialogue? Is it number 2?
I don't know. I know everybody hates 2, but I don't know if that's for the dialogue or what.
Yeah.
Not my series. Leo, I was recently playing the opening of 2018 Spider-Man, and I was reminded about when you came back from the cover story trip and you're I'm a little worried about the writing in this game because in the beginning of the game, Spider-Man crawls inside a vent in Fisk Tower and he says, "My own personal ventrance." And it really stood out to me playing that game again. Oh, that's right. I think the writing in that game is pretty good overall, but I remember that's such a red flag for Leo when he talked about a personal ventrance.
Do you remember at the end of the month of coverage when we got Brian Intar on the line and he immediately said, "Oh, hey, Leo, you want me to talk about my favorite ventrances?"
I forgot about that.
That was traumatizing. Creative director of Spider-Man roasting me.
Oh, man. I would not want to be held accountable by the talent that have made the games that I've sort of even games that I've loved that I've nitpicked, over the years, Wolfenstein or anything like that. I would not want to be held accountable for things that I've said about that.
Yeah, people listen to stuff, which is alarming. Hey, Jacob Hubbard writes in, says, "Happy 100th!" Thank you, Jacob. With JV on the podcast, I have to ask him, are you as anxious as me to get some Wolfenstein 3 news? New Colossus feels like forever ago, and while Youngblood was fun, I'm eager to see how BJ's story finishes. What would you like to see in the game when it finally comes out?
For it to exist.
For it to exist.
They say it's still happening. Pete Hines has said twice now, I believe, that Wolfenstein's still happening. Please stop bothering us about this. But it's one of those things, right? Machine Games now has Indiana Jones.
Right.
So how much of resources are going to be dedicated to Indiana Jones versus Wolfenstein?
And when Indiana Jones sells 16 gazillion units, when are they going to be that propelled to go back to Wolfenstein 3? It's kind of a weird spot.
And also Machine Games just released DLC for Quake of all things, the original Quake that they remastered. They did new episodes for the remaster. So it makes me wonder if okay, they're going to wrap up Wolfenstein 3 and then maybe that studio's just sort of they're okay, we'll remake old shooters sort of thing and then focus on big properties. So it's going to be a 2-split studio. But as far as Wolfenstein goes, it's one of those things where I was happy with how 2 ended. obviously it's not really a cliffhanger ending. It suggests that more is coming, and then Youngblood happened. So if we get more Wolfenstein, I'll be super happy, but like I'm not gonna have my heart broken if we don't get 3. Like I'd love to play 3, but I feel like 2 ended in a good enough spot where I was happy with that, honestly. But I would love to beat the out of Mecha Hitler. Yes.
It'd be nice, yeah. It feels like even if they get derailed and get distracted and focus on other games, they could have kind of like I don't know, the best example I could come up with like a Max Payne 3, or just like one last big hurrah of like, you all like single player story games? Check this out. I feel like there's a lot of money if they wait long enough for that, right?
Yeah.
So never say never to these types of things.
Yeah, I don't expect to hear anything about that game for like the next 3 or 4 years, just because I don't want to get my hopes up. But if and when Wolfenstein 3 happens, I will be very happy.
There it is. Jason Wojnar writes in with the most JV question of all time, somehow topping that last one. He says, a long time ago, JV posted a picture from the Soviet war film Come and See on his Twitter. I want to know his thoughts on it. I personally think it's a masterpiece.
It's very sad and devastating, and as good of an anti-war movie as I've ever seen, and I never want to see it again. And I feel like that's the general sentiment for that movie. It's very horrifying. Yeah, it's. I think it's a Russian film, if I'm remembering correctly. It's very brutal. Like you see stuff like the what was that Adrian Brody movie, The Pianist? Predators?
Oh, Pianist? Yeah.
Yeah, that like this movie's up there with that and like Schindler's List in terms of like the stuff like the atrocities it showcases and stuff, and it's beautifully shot. It's a beautifully shot movie. Like when there aren't horrifying things happening on screen, it's one of the best movies about here's a countryside. This is how beautiful it looks, and so on and so forth. But there's just so many horrible things that happen in that movie. It was heartbreaking.
Yeah,
very good, but heartbreaking.
Come and see, everybody. Go and see it. 1985 classic. Bryce,
it's on the Criterion channel.
There we go. Bryce Blackmore writes in and says, is there 100 of any type of food which you could consume in an hour? And if so, what is it?
Rice?
It's the old Mitch Hedberg joke. Yeah, rice is really good if you're in the mood for 2,000 of something.
Cheetos.
100 Cheetos? Yeah, how many Cheetos are in a bag, do you think, Leo?
100 exactly.
Hang on, let's see. Maybe people have figured this out. How many Cheetos in one bag? There's like an average bag of Cheetos. Oh, okay. Jeff, guess. How many Cheetos are in one bag of Cheetos?
We talking puffy ones?
I think just basic, original Cheeto. Human Cheeto.
Crunchy
Cheeto.
92.
You fool! The bag says that it's 189, but apparently people have investigated and it's averaging out to 237.
That's a good direction to be wrong.
Yeah, way to go. Thanks, Chester.
I really liked that Jeffem looked down when you asked that question, like he was secretly looking at a Cheetos bag next to his
It's lined with Cheetos. He never shows his fingertips.
He's just eyeballing it.
Mm-hmm. Starkiller writes in and says, hey, MinnMaxers, in honor of your 100th episode, I've put together a little bit of MinnMax YouTube trivia. All right, Jeff, this is for you. What is the longest video on MinnMax? Not counting live stream archives.
Last of Us Deepest Dive Part 2.
Okay.
Final Fantasy Remake, 7 Remake Episode 1.
I'm sorry, it's Final Fantasy VII Remake Chapter 15 through the ending, at clocking in at 4 hours, 14 minutes, closely followed by the MinnMax Awards from 2020, which was 4 hours and 4 minutes.
You guys had a Lord of the Rings Return of the King length episode?
We also did full commentary tracks for all of the Lord of the Rings movie as a Patreon exclusive, but I guess that doesn't count either. Also, Jeff, pop quiz. What was the first Great Goatee Hunt MinnMax ever did?
Was it Luigi's Mansion?
Ooh, good guess. No, it was Dreams, apparently. So look at that.
Oh.
Still the goatee in our hearts.
Wow.
Let's see. Fred DeNovo says, congratulations on 100 episodes. Do you ever think about how Hansen's local paper effectively created your job title, Computer Loving Cohort? Yeah, that is weird.
That was weird.
That's weird how that happens, but that's nice.
It's a great phrase.
Hey, and I finally have a computer now, so
you
it all
finally
comes full circle.
Hang on though, dude. You love that computer?
I like it so far.
Okay.
We'll see. We'll see where it goes.
Boy.
Yep.
Trouble in paradise.
Jawarhello Pryor says, "What's up, folks? It was great last week to hear such positive thoughts about Surreal. It's always uplifting to hear such positivity from peers. So here's an excuse to give your cohorts their flowers. Episode 100 sounds like the perfect occasion. What's something you really appreciate about one of the other people on the show today? To keep this question brief, maybe y'all can go clockwise based on positions on the show screen." Okay, so I guess you guys can't see this. So let's see, clockwise would be me complimenting JV. I think JV is a testament to, this makes it seem like you were murdering people, but being militant about making big changes in your life and sticking with it. I think you've had a couple of very important turns in your life that have made you objectively a better person, and very few people are like, I see the path, I'm going to get my ass kicked until I stay down this path. And it seems like it's worked out for you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. That's nice. That's very pleasant to hear.
Yeah.
Jeffem, you are always a great editor. When we worked together at Game Informer, I always really appreciated your edits, and you are very dryly funny. Like at the office, you were funny in a way that no one else was, I feel like. And usually, whenever you'd make a joke or like have an insight, it usually make me laugh more than anyone else. Even though, they were more of a from time to time thing as opposed to like, oh, here's a Jeffem sort of like nugget of wisdom or a joke every day. So what I'm saying is you are very wise and funny, and I really enjoyed working with you.
Well, thank you, JV, and I miss you, and that's very sweet of you.
All right.
I'm assuming it's Leo.
It is Leo.
I can't see anything. Leo is one of the, well, no, not one. I'm sorry. I shouldn't hedge that. Leo was always the funniest person at GI, and you make me jealous how funny you are and how organically it just flows out of you. And I also think you have grown a lot. You can make very serious videos, which are just mind-blowing. I still think of the Watchmen-inspired one as one of the greatest artworks of all time. And it just seems like you are a river that also runs deep, Leo. Oh. And you seem to have thought a lot about where you are in life and how you're growing and your own mental health and all of those good things that I think a lot of people don't give enough thought to.
Yeah, that's very sweet.
Your rebuttal, Leo?
Defend yourself, Leo. Show how awful you are, I guess.
By the way,
a bad deed right now.
The name of that video, if you want to check it out, it's on Leo Vader's YouTube channel, and it's When You Slip on a Banana Peel.
Yes, I actually really just changed the thumbnail for that today.
Oh, to just a still from Now You See Me?
Yeah.
Smart,
dude. Broke.
Love it. All right, Leo, hit me, dude.
Ben Hansen, wow, where do I begin? I was just saying on stream the other day that you're God's perfect podcast host. Like, getting to know you over the years and all of your interests and skills and capacity for note-taking and being productive and your interests. It's like it all comes together to do the act of hosting a podcast. It truly is feels like what you were born to do. And that's not just the way you can talk about topics. It's also in our meetings, you're always very concerned about making sure everybody is talking enough. Like, it's not just the you show. And your capacity for empathy like that, I think, is what makes you a great podcast host.
That's very sweet.
And I think it's great about you.
As can be seen by the Writers Republic segment. So thank you so much.
That's right. Your magnum opus.
All right. Very sweet. Thank you, Jarrell. Question of the week, JV. What do you like? There are a lot of really good ones this week. I was really blown away.
Yeah. It's so small, but I really like the book game completion ratio one.
I was thinking that too.
It's just such a brain teaser. It's like, yeah, I wonder.
Yeah. All right. I like that too.
That's what I go with. I think.
A lot of great ones. But I think I'm always a fan of those questions. It just seems like a basic thing that makes all of us go, yeah, what is up with that? So Zach Ink, congratulations. You win the vinyl soundtrack, or the vinyl track that's in Kentucky Route Zero from our friends at I Am 8-Bit. So thank you so much, Zach Ink.
Good.
And you can win something on your own if you want to submit a question for us to answer on the show next week by supporting us over on Patreon at any tier. We'd appreciate it. Now it's time for something we like to call Get a Load of This. All right, Jeffem, you need to be first. You need to be last with that community one. So hit us first, sir.
Get a load of this. I stole this one from the Get a Load of This channel because I didn't have one.
Love it.
But L Train did not disappoint. He posted out a tweet that was from a video of a Henrico, Virginia school board meeting, which I think they were holding a public meeting where people could come in and talk about, I'm assuming it was about mask mandates, because there was a very irate woman at the beginning of the clip. But then they went to other people who had submitted their names as wanting to speak about this topic. And the guy who was running the meeting kind of went through a list of names, but those people weren't there. And I don't think he could figure it out, because as it went on and on, it became apparent to the viewers, at least, that this was, as the tweet says, some Bart Simpson and it was all basically made up names. And he couldn't have played it better even if he was in on it, because it was a lot of, let's hear from Eileen Dover. Is there an Eileen Dover out there? And it's about 90 seconds of these names that he just did not realize. And they did a very good job with the names, if I do say.
Oh, okay.
They sound like real names. No like Ivana Tinkle or anything like that.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Some quality pranking going on.
There's links in the description if you want to check it out, however you're watching or listening to this episode. Let's see. Hey, get a load of this, everybody. There's this YouTube video that I stumbled across. Seems to be popular, and it's called Dubai is a Parody of the 21st Century. Just breaking down everything that's wrong with the city and how it was built and everything. But one of the interesting facts in there is the Burj Khalifa, we all know and love from Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, the tallest building in the world. Apparently, it's not hooked up to a sewage line. So every day, trucks have to haul the poop out of the Burj Khalifa. And apparently the trucks are like backed up, I guess no pun intended. And sometimes these trucks have to wait 24 hours because there's such a backlog as they're trying to just haul all of the poo-poo and pee-pee out of the Burj Khalifa, because it was built in such a rush that they didn't connect it to the sewage line. So fun facts for everybody. JV, you got one, dude?
Yeah. So this was a tweet I saw the other day, and it was just super fascinating because it sort of like tapped into something when I was younger, and maybe it's just an every person thing, and I'm super curious to hear about it. The tweet says, "How are things going in Austin, you may ask?" And it's a screenshot of a subreddit, of an Austin, Texas-focused subreddit that asks the question, where to scream in Austin. And the post says, "Weird question, I know, but me and my friend had a rough week and we want to go somewhere and run really fast screaming." Anyone know any areas where there's minimal car traffic, not many houses, and where we would be less likely to get kidnapped? So it's just one of those fascinating things of like, when I was a kid, I remember feeling super frustrated, and I say kid all the way to like teenager and stuff, of like,
sure.
or I guess even like college, to run somewhere and like scream my feelings out to like some vast field or something where I didn't really want to interact with people. I just wanted to like express my frustration and like solitary confinement, but not be in like a house or something. Like, is that something you guys have felt? Like, is that like a universal thing, or is that just a weirdo thing?
I want to do it now.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I think like growing up like in the country, it's like you have that opportunity whenever you want and no one can hear you. In the country, no one can hear you scream, JV. So I don't think I ever had that impulse.
That's the plot of many horror films.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
I see the appeal for sure.
I get it.
I just like the idea that in Austin, someone has to ask that in Austin.
Right,
so they won't be kidnapped, I guess.
That is great, but unfortunately, you didn't say get a load of this at the beginning.
It doesn't.
So I lose.
So now I want to go scream.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Leo, do you want to show them how it's done?
Hey, get a load of this, guys.
Hell yeah.
Unless it's been a get a load of this before. Kid pics.
What that?
Something from my childhood. Maybe not everyone's childhood. Little art making app on the computer. Iconic sound effects. When you delete stuff, you get the little guy screaming at you.
Oh, like the Austin.
You've got the little garbage truck tool to pick up a piece of the image and move it around. Just weird little things for kids to have fun drawing and making art on their computer. And somebody just remade it perfectly on the internet for free. And it's called kidpix.app. And you go there and you can just noodle around with all those nostalgic sound effects and save the image.
Oh,
Leah,
awesome.
did you ever play the Spider-Man ripoff they did of that? They had a licensed ripoff of KidPix that had the animated Spider-Man cartoon.
Oh, wow.
Here, let me find it. Keep talking, I'll find it.
It sounds great. We can put the link in there too, in the description, but that sounds fun. So it's basically just like a funky MS Paint thing from back in the day?
Yeah, essentially. And
Okay.
there's no reason for you to look at this if you're not nostalgic for KidPix.
It sounds great.
But as someone who was, got a lot of value out of it.
Yeah,
Terrible name, though.
pretty bad.
We can all agree.
Yeah, that's
it
not aged well.
was Spider-Man Cartoon Maker was the name of it, Leo. It
Oh,
looks like.
weird.
Never played it.
It's literally just that. Hold on. Yeah, I'm linking it to you right now in our Discord thingy. But yeah, it's just that. Like,
That
that's
sounds
all it
very fun.
is.
Cool.
Yeah.
Jeff, did you pull one from the community?
Yeah, get all of this. I did the immature one earlier so I can seem sophisticated at the end.
Love it.
But Fenrir posted into the Get a Load of This channel and said, apropos of nothing, this thread from Obsidian director Carrie Patel about the impact of voluntary crunch on other members of a game development team is a sobering read. And she has a whole thread kind of explaining why the argument of like enthusiastic game designers who would want to volunteer to do crunch is still a bad thing, and that it shouldn't be supported by developers, which actually, despite what Fenrir said, is apropos of something that was making the rounds recently.
Well, yeah, it was interesting. It was Ben Reeves' interview with the Naughty Dog co-presidents, where they asked about Reeves. Just, I don't know, maybe it was an email interview. I don't know, but it seemed pretty light. But just asked about thoughts on crunch and the evolution there. And Evan Wells, the co-president of Naughty Dog, had that interesting take of just saying, "Yeah, back when I was young, I used to work really hard." And so then I saw like Jason Schreier in particular on Twitter, and a lot of people kind of gravitating towards the idea of like working hard doesn't equal crunch. You should stop associating that. But yeah, I read what Carrie there from Obsidian wrote. JV, were you on did you visit Obsidian with me? Did you meet Carrie? Okay.
No, I was not on that trip.
Okay.
I didn't really do anything with the Outer Worlds until I started working with them on the Outer Worlds.
Maybe that's why I'm
for PR.
associating that with you. That's right. Yeah, but she was very smart, so it's cool to have that insight
Carrie
from
is
her in that
very
thread.
smart. Yes.
All right. That's it for this episode of the MinnMax Show. Thanks everybody for watching or listening. Thanks for listening to us for 100 episodes. If you've been here the whole time, you know what you got to do. Leave that comment on YouTube that says, "I'm keeping it 100. That's kind of our little cutesy thing. But thank you, everybody in the MinnMax community. We closed out our big charity drive, our Crossfade charity drive for Hopewell Music, the community music school in North Minneapolis. We ended up raising $12,500 for Hopewell Music. So thank you so much,
Wow.
everybody.
Nice job.
I mean, that's the stunning thing, JV, is just out of the blue, you can say, "Hey, everybody, there's this struggling community music school in North Minneapolis. Does anybody want to help give kids some free music lessons?" And then we can raise over $12,000 for these kids. And like the amazing thing is it's very direct, right? So this resulted in over 15 kids having full scholarships to the school and free instrument rentals. So genuinely
that's so
life-changing for these kids. So thanks to everybody who supported that. We appreciate it. Let's see. We also have MinnMax Council, which is our Patreon exclusive podcast. On the last episode, it was Jeff and I taking calls from the community. We talk about searching for a new cohort, what that process is like. Jeff talks about fatherhood, old tabletop
and
games.
100 quizzes.
And then every other person called in with trivia. So if you like trivia, it's basically Jeff and I competing in trivia throughout the entire thing. So if you want more podcasts from us, you can always listen to the MinnMax Council by supporting us over on Patreon. If you do that, you also get access to Cyril Vasquez's huge talk about No More Heroes 3. So we'd appreciate the support. JV, what would you like to plug, sir?
Oh man, that is a great question. I guess Post-Horn PR. It's a pro bono PR thing that me and a bunch of other volunteers run. to help folks without a media budget get news about their game out there. I think we do a pretty cool thing, and we do a lot with not that many resources. So yeah.
So
check out the games that our folks that we're helping out with. So that's stuff like Scald. Hold on. Sorry, I totally blanked. You caught
no,
me
that's
then.
fine. That's fine. Do you have like a link just to the site?
Yeah, I can get you the link. But we've got like 15 clients now that we're just helping out. But it's like Call of Songar, which is this like Daggerfall spiritual successor that looks really, really cool. We've got a Shiva story, which obviously I'm really enthusiastic about since we own Shivas. Scald Against the Black Priori is a love letter to old school RPGs. It's super hard and crushing, has very cool retro graphics, but we support a bunch of people. And I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud of the work we do. So I guess that's what I'd support, or I'd give a shout out to.
Yeah, check out the link in the description below. Leo, you got anything you want to plug, man?
Oh, I just started my community Discord for my YouTube channel.
Interesting.
Just go to twitter.com/LeoVader. It's the pinned tweet. Come join. It's free.
There we go. Cool. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching or listening, spreading the word about MinnMax. We appreciate it. JV, thank you for being here, sir.
Yeah, no, thank you. I was super happy to be here for the 100th episode. That's rad. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and thanks to everybody that supports us at that $50 tier. The thank you crew. Their names go a little something like this: Fatal X Blade, the YouTube channel, the State of the Scene podcast, Joshua Bucy, Clemens Zobel, I Am 8-Bit, Zachary Pligge, Ludwig Roque, Andrew Uerkwitz, Andrew Vala, BeatenDownBrian, Best of the Rest podcast, Jawarhello, Mirko Arico-Torreno, Call Me By Your Game podcast, Mark Seliga, John Higby, PrettyGoodPrinting.com, Clint Farley, Drew Waranis, Steve Bamdad, Starkiller, Logan Krause, Purebred number 6, Kris, Spider-Dan, SlyckNic, SpiralInYourEyes, Preetham Yarlagadda, and Dan Villone. Thanks so much, everybody. Be good, have fun, let's go.
Bye, everyone.